Sports leader 95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester, an Odyssey sports station.
It's time to start the show and talk about the sports we saw. Inside jokes and takes from Danger and Battaglia. Bills and the Sabres and the Amers. Who gave a microphone to these jerks? Gene's a big timer, a social misfits. Clueless to the title of the biggest fuss gag hits. Chuck Munchie's goons have the last say. So thanks for your time, Mr. Mayo. Danger likes his cold ones and he likes his bears. But this is Rochester, cute Francesa.
Oh, kiss.
He's critical of Sean, he's critical of Alan. Of course he married Sandy, cause she's Italian. Welcome to the sports bar, that's where you are. Welcome to the sports bar, that's where you are. Welcome to the sports bar, that's where you are. With Danger and Battaglia.
Captain's Log, January 15th, the year of our Lord 2025, and day 17 of the Sports Bar Deep Freeze. We're close today. I feel like we could almost see our breath. It hasn't gotten better.
Yeah, if it's in the teens outside, it's not warm in here. If you're watching right now on the the video stream, I look kind of silly. I look like I'm ready to rob a bank. I don't care. I'm trying to stay warm.
We've got our YouTube channel up at the Fan Rochester. Our stream is going for you every afternoon here. You can watch the Sports Bar as well as listen on in on the free-to-download Odyssey app. We appreciate you checking us out, however you may be doing so, and we're set for 3 hours of frigid sports talk in the Flower City. And we're going to lean in on the Ravens a little bit today, learn more about the Bills' opponent Sunday afternoon in the divisional round with both of our guests here at the Sports Bar.
Kevin Ostreicher, who is the host of the Locked On Ravens podcast. Last time we had him on was week 4 leading up to it. Well, the Ravens have played better down the stretch. There's no doubt. They're secondary. They're using their safety Kyle Hamilton in different ways. You know, we'll get the Baltimore side of this. How are they feeling? Because, sure, they beat Pittsburgh, but who had a more impressive win in the wild card round? It was Buffalo, in my opinion. So we'll talk to our guy, Kevin Ostreicher in Baltimore. That's coming up in the 4 o'clock hour.
Yeah, and I know that a lot of people are going to talk about what the Ravens have been here down the stretch of the season. Again, I don't want to take anything away from the Bills' opponent. They beat them in week 4, and they beat them handily. But down the stretch here, when the Ravens' defense all of a sudden got good, and they're the best defense in the league all of a sudden, their opponents in Week 15, the New York Giants, Week 16, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they had the Texans on Christmas, they had the Browns to finish the season. Not exactly a murderer's row of offenses that you're going up against there down the stretch. And they haven't seen anything like what the Bills have done offensively since week 4.
Well, let me give you the counterpoint because everybody, boy, this Bills defense is playing much better. Okay, Jets, Patriots sandwiched around them, and Bo Nix, the rookie quarterback. Okay, so sure. But earlier today, it was the front end, the home and home, coming up at 3:25, our normal Wednesday segment with PJ Glasser, who, by the way, I mean, hopefully you listened to PJ last week. Gave us that amazing stat. This isn't a trend. This is like in a bright neon sign, and you've got to write this down in your phone or somewhere and remember this year for next wild card. Remember next season for wild card round.
If there's a team next year that isn't in the playoffs this year and they're a favorite on the road, they will lose that game.
Since 2017, those teams are now 1-16. Ergo also 1-16 against the spread. What other stat points to here's an easy way to make money? And PJ, because if you turn the clock back, we were all like, oh, yeah, the Chargers, they're a better team than Houston. No, that was one where PJ's like, you take Houston in this game and you take the Rams against the Vikings, and voila, that's what ended up happening. PJ Glasser, who, by the way, is based in Baltimore.
Sure is.
So, look, we're based up here. He's based down there. He's coming up at 3:25. And by going on BetQL today, Danger, I had to kind of expedite my thought process because I like, as do you, let me take in different opinions. Let me see who's practicing. Let's look at the updated weather.
Yeah, I think most people that have to make a prediction like to wait until as late in the week as possible because you learn more about injuries, you learn more about weather, all the factors that are in play.
So I went on his show today, and I can't do that. I have to give a prediction for this game. And I gave kind of something to watch for, but I gave the reason why I made the pick. Something to watch for is this. And you don't want it to come down to a kicker missing a kick, but have there been two more maligned kickers in the NFL this year than Tyler Bass and Justin Tucker?
What's wrong with these guys? What's wrong? They don't look like themselves.
Yeah, Justin Tucker, I feel like they should have moved on. I think they're just there out of loyalty. And the last time Justin Tucker kicked here, that didn't go so well in that wild card game. It was a divisional round, forgive me. Back in 2020 season, January 2021, he missed 3 field goals that night. But it's not like to say Tyler Bass has had his good fortunes either. He's missed 7 PATs. The reason I took Buffalo by a field goal in this game, and this is just the obvious, but it's worth stating. Yes, the Bills got blown out in Baltimore. That was week 4. And week 4, if you remember what happened the previous 2 games actually, the Miami game, Taron Johnson got hurt. He wasn't available. You didn't have Terrell Bernard. Matt Milano wasn't anywhere near the field at that point. 3 of your best tacklers. Oh, by the way, Taylor Rapp went out after 19 snaps, and Khalil Shakir pulled up lame and only tried to get it out. He was rendered useless. So despite all that, the Bills still had kind of something going in the second half until they turned that ball over. So, Danger, if you get some of your best players back, I think you could hope for a better result this time around.
What was your prediction?
I didn't predict the score.
Oh, you didn't give a score?
I just said Buffalo by 3.
Buffalo by 3.
So I didn't get my feet held to the fire. He did ask me, though, for this. How do you go about the over-under? I'm like, okay, this over-under is at 51.5 on a cold night. Yeah. We're expecting, my gosh, it's the 2 MVPs. No,
I think
go
it's gonna
under.
Be miserable. Yeah,
you go under in this game.
Yeah.
This is like, pay attention how the Bills and Chiefs in the postseason, it's ball control. And the Bills kind of gave you a preview. What they want to do is run the ball and limit the opposition, limit the opposing quarterback from getting on the field. So that to me is the easier one. I don't think that's the second highest over-under this week. That's ridiculous. That has a higher over-under than Rams-Eagles? How?
Unless Vegas sees this as a potential shootout where the Bills' defense isn't going to be able to stop Lamar and Derrick Henry, and in order to counter that, they're going to have to score at will. They're going to have to score every time they touch the ball, and maybe it is a shootout, but I think the weather is a factor there. I think if you're talking about temperatures being, what are they saying, 12 degrees, chilly.
Could be down to 8.
Maybe some flurries.
Maybe the wind isn't going to be that much of a factor, but it's not going to be 0. Really wasn't anything in the wild card game. I also kind of factor in this, and this is more of a feel here and a read on this, but when the Ravens win the postseason, they win. But what happens when the Ravens lose a game? Like, we've seen Josh Allen lose postseason games where he's been good to great. See the Chiefs, right? Wasn't good against the Bengals. When does Lamar Jackson get out-dueled, but you could say, you know what, he played his heart out?
You've had him in his postseason losses lose his composure, lose his cool, appear rattled. From my memory of seeing Lamar Jackson lose in the postseason, it's because he's been rattled. He was certainly rattled against Kansas City last year. Hell, you can go back to his first appearance in the postseason. I just remember him always being somebody who can be rattled in the postseason. He was concussed against the Bills when they played in the COVID year, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you get to him and frustrate him, affect him, I like your chances. But he's been a different level this year, man. I mean, he really has been spectacular. No other way to put it. And that's not to say that Josh Allen hasn't been. It is to say Lamar Jackson, when you watch him play, when you watch how this Baltimore offense goes, it's impressive. It's very, very impressive. And we'll pick it apart with PJ Glasser, the host of Send It In from the BetQL Network, when he joins us later on this hour. Our insider calls are presented by BetMGM. You can go check out all the latest lines today on the BetMGM app. And as I mentioned, we're going to go a little bit deeper with the Ravens today. Later this afternoon, you mentioned it, Kevin Ostreicher, the Locked On Ravens podcast. He'll be stopping by at 4:25. You can pull up a stool and join us on the Good Smoke Barbecue and Pub Wingman line. 866-4FAN is that phone number, 866-4326. Award-winning barbecue from Good Smoke Barbecue and Pub, 135 West Commercial Street in East Rochester. GoodSmokeBBQ.com. I'm holding my coffee mug for my coffee cup for warmth.
You know where they will have heat? This is what we call a segue, kids. Friday, they will have heat at Three Heads Brewery.
Such a professional.
Yeah, we can come hang with us 3 to 6, Three Heads on Atlantic Avenue. We're Danger. You could score a 4-pack to go for game day, the limited run Leaping Hazy IPA Playoff Edition.
Playoffs? Don't talk about
Playoffs.
playoffs?
Yes.
You kidding me? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game.
Freddy's Woodfire Pizza is also going to be there, so invite you to join us 3 to 6. You don't have to RSVP. It's cool if you do. Three Heads coming up Friday.
As I'm drinking this, do you remember the first time you had a cup of coffee from a Keurig? Like the first time you saw a Keurig, somebody gave you a mug, or like I remember seeing a Keurig. I know you're not a big Keurig guy.
No.
Not a fan at all.
No,
Got
not a
it.
fan. Sorry.
I remember the first time, and I'm like, wow, that's what kind of witchcraft is this, where I get a single cup of coffee out of this machine, and it's piping hot. It tastes good. I think I'm going to become French press guy at work. I think that's a power move, right? Like you take your coffee seriously. I take it seriously, too. I drink it black. I like my coffee. Maybe French press. French press is a move. Come in, set it on the desk, let everybody know I got the best coffee in the building.
Did you grow up in a household, Danger, where it used to be a microwave your cup of water, and then you would pour in, just spoon in your crystals? Like
like the Sanka, yeah. I remember seeing that. I mean, I didn't drink any of that because I was a kid. My memories of coffee are always like my old man worked at a radio station is how I got into this industry, and he would drag me along to work, as many parents do with their kids. Hey, this is what I do. I had to work. Come in, just sit over here, or go, occupy yourself over here. But I always remember, there are things I remember about the radio stations that he worked at in the late 70s, early 80s to mid 80s. One, smoking was everywhere. Everybody was smoking. The ceilings were like yellow, like the yellow to brown. I mean, just straight up tar and nicotine in the ceiling tiles of every studio that I was ever in. And I always remember the coffee pot being like the Mr. Coffee, but it was white. The coffee machine was white at one point, but it too had turned like this weird shade of yellow, and just, like the elements had gotten to it, and it was mud. You're drinking mud. So from those meager beginnings, now I really try to like savor, even if it's coming from a Keurig, I try to savor the cup, and God knows today, it's a lifesaver because it is warm in a room that is not warm, Gino. And I'm sorry, I know we're talking football. I'm completely off track because it's hard to stay focused when it's this chilly in here.
Well, how far do we run this up the ladder? I don't want to be the whiny little guy who sends an email to HR and the GM like, hey, can we have
Boss
heat?
Lady knows. I brought it up to Boss Lady yesterday. She knows.
She knows.
She knows.
Well, if I brought in the thermometer and it's below 62 degrees,
If I brought in
we can call the city.
If I brought in a meat probe, would that count? Could a meat probe measure the air temperature in the studio?
I can't answer that.
Would it be accurate? I don't know. They're probably not accurate. I could do that. We yeah.
Anybody has a thermometer we can borrow, let us know.
All right, so the table is set. We've got Three Heads coming up on Friday, and that's going to be a fantastic time, Gino. Thanks for bringing that up, and we both can't wait to be there. We'll have some special guests, and if anything, just great to hang out with our regulars, get ready for a weekend of unbelievable football. I mean, I think we've clarified this is the best weekend of pro football from a quality standpoint.
Without a doubt. And one other note there, too, because, sometimes you and I were busy with high school football, calling it on CW, or me, RIT hockey. I don't have to run off anywhere Friday night, so we can hang a little bit after the show, too. So
there's your invitation. Gino's going to get wild and weird on Friday night. So come on out, everybody. Hang out with Gino and I. We'll be at Three Heads from 3 until 6, and a little afterwards as well. That'll be a good time. Can't wait. Friday night's going to be fun.
Last time they kicked this out, I think. Yeah, like, hey, we're going to have a band coming up. Do you guys want to move?
Yeah, can you get your stuff? We're getting the tables out of here. Get your stuff and move. It's going to be a good time. And don't forget to get that Leaping Hazy IPA 4-pack, the playoff edition, the playoff run. That's the limited run. It's going to be a lot of fun. All right. What else do we have going on here around the NFL? Oh, we can mention this. I mean, we have the injury report, or we learned that today Brandon Codrington practiced fully. That's good news for his return. And I guess the injury that I'm most concerned with, and it doesn't seem like it's going to be anything that affects him, is the calf of Alec Anderson. I want Alec Anderson healthy and good to go for Sunday, but I don't know that we're getting anything new on that.
Unless sometimes it'll tighten up after a game, so that's why I want to don't want to give any definitives. You would think since he returned to the game, when he left, they had it checked out, and he returned. It's the playoffs. I would expect him out there. It would also be nice for Ray Davis, but, the way they handle this, they're not going to give you any kind of direction. It's either a yes or no question. Is he cleared or is he not? So he's in the protocol. Allowed to practice limited today. So that would kind of let you to believe, okay, that would at least allow you a chance to get him on the field coming up Sunday.
I saw this cross my feed, and I thought it was interesting, and I'll bring it up now, and we can talk about it a little bit here. We were wondering, it was yesterday, maybe on Monday, hey, who's going to play Lamar Jackson on the scout team? Is that a KJ Hamler thing? Who does that? Well, the Bills brought in a guy who is very familiar with the Ravens. Anthony Brown signed to the practice squad. So maybe Anthony Brown is Lamar Jackson in practice for the Buffalo Bills this week in preparation for what they have to face here coming up on Sunday. And we were talking about this yesterday, too. The guy that we thought, oh, yeah, if you want to put some big size out there, put Eli Ankou out there. Make him active. He was released today in a corresponding move.
There are a couple things I'm wrong on here. First, I'm going to admit, Eli Ankou, I don't know what I'm missing here. I like the guy. Maybe he's not a guy you would want to have on third down, but the fact that he's bounced around so much and up and down, I don't know. I thought in a game like this you could have used him, but no, he's not going to be on the field if he's not on the practice squad right now. The other thing I want to admit that it was wrong about, this pertains to the NFL head coaching search, and for teams like the Jets and the Bears, and you have this time, I always say this, you have the time, talk to everyone. Bring everyone in. Maybe you learn something. Maybe someone will surprise you, and that will become the leading candidate. Actually, I'm wrong about that. There is a line. It's called Arthur Smith. The Chicago Bears completing their interview today with Arthur Smith.
Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah.
Okay. If it's McCarthy, you could live with it. If it's Pete Carroll, you could live with it. If they hire Arthur Smith in Chicago?
Terrible, I know. And he's going to interview with the Jets next.
Oh, please. Jets, hire him.
And I actually think the Jets would hire him. I feel like that's the kind of move the Jets would make. With the Bears, the more I think about it, I just think about it constantly. It's really not healthy, the way I think about who they're talking to. It's like at this point, I'm just waiting for them to flash, on social media, flash their little image of, interview completed today with Jimmy, and it's a picture of my neighbor. Jimmy is interview completed today with Tony. Tony, congratulations. You got the call and you interviewed with the Bears or the Jets, because it's different every day, and sometimes I feel like I'm seeing two times a day I'm seeing different candidates. I think if the Bears' objective is to hire Ben Johnson, then Ryan Poles needs to be fired. Ryan Poles is not going to be fired. It doesn't appear that Ryan Poles is going to be fired. Therefore, the Bears will not get Ben Johnson. And they keep saying, we're going to cast a wide net. We're going to cast a wide net. It's like you're not going to be able to tell Ryan Poles, hey, you didn't interview enough guys to find out whether or not we had the right coach for this job. I'm not excited about the prospects. Marcus Freeman is the only one. We got a little bit of time here before we know whether or not he's even going to entertain the idea of taking an interview. He's been requested for one. That's the guy that I want. If it's not going to be Ben Johnson, and with each passing day, I'm like, it's not going to be Ben Johnson. If Ben Johnson goes anywhere, I could see him going to Jacksonville because they're crazy enough to pay him whatever it is he's asking for, or the Raiders because he'll have control and whatever he is asking for in terms of a salary.
That's the idea I came around on. If Ben Johnson could figure out, okay, I can bring in my own quarterback. We're not in an ideal position to draft a quarterback, but who knows? Maybe he falls in love with Quinn Ewers, who, by the way, declared for the draft today.
Yeah.
Nobody thought Bo Nix was going to be some sort of, okay, this is somebody who might be a quarterback if you go back to last year. So maybe that mid-round, first-round quarterback is available. And, yeah, I've come around on that idea that maybe Ben Johnson and the Raiders might make some sense.
Yeah, saw that also. Just another player move here. Former Bill Nick Morrow going back to the team that he played 12 games. He started 12 games for last year. Nick Morrow signing with the Eagles practice squad. Now they of course lost Nakobe Dean at linebacker, so the addition of Morrow there makes a little bit of sense. He signed with the Bills this year. He didn't get on the field that much. Was eventually released. Signing now on the practice squad for the Philadelphia Eagles. I saw, and man, I feel like we could do 20 minutes or so on the Steelers and just what their end-of-season dilemmas are here because they've got so many. They really feel like a team in purgatory, and there's a lot of people just, agitated with how the Steelers season end, rightfully so. Skylar Thompson signed a futures contract, and if you in doing so, really becomes, right now, the only quarterback on their offseason roster when you consider both Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, who started games, and Kyle Allen will all become free agents come March.
I mean, we don't talk enough like how they whiffed on Kenny Pickett. It was almost like the ghost of the past where, like, you passed on Dan Marino. You cannot pass on Kenny Pickett. Yeah, that didn't work out.
No, you whiff on quarterback in first round, and it costs you to see the Giants, see the Steelers. And for anybody that says bring back Russ or bring back Justin, why? They're not good. Russell gave you, I think, as much as he could give you. He's a warrior out there, but you see his limitations. You know his limitations. Justin Fields, you could say in the games that he started earlier in the season, was average. And average for Justin Fields is actually better than he's ever been. But neither of them, in my opinion, should be starting for that team next year.
Well, you have to do everything in your power to find the next guy. This AFC is not going to change anytime soon with these four quarterbacks. One of them isn't in the postseason, being Burrow. But good luck to anybody, especially in that division. My goodness.
Yeah. I think. Oh, and then one other NFL note: the Colts are going to be the home team for the Berlin game in 2025. We learned that today.
So the way the NFL kind of drips and releases these dates, how it was the Browns, Jaguars, and Jets they announced in London, and the Colts. What do those four teams have in common? Oh, they're all not in the postseason.
Yeah.
So I'm telling you, the Bills are there are 4 slots still remaining. One, I believe, is in Madrid, correct?
There's a Madrid game, yeah.
Yeah, so
they haven't announced a Madrid home team yet, but it'll be an AFC team. And I don't know that it'll be the Bills. Maybe it will be. I don't know. But the Bills could be an opponent for the Browns, right? That could be – the Bills could be going to London to take on the Browns next year. I could see that happening.
They could very well easily end up over there. But any team in the postseason right now, the way the NFL wants to control the messaging, you give your fan base there on an off day something to feel good about the upcoming season. You'll have that Bills in wherever announcement coming up sometime in February.
But he knows, sell it like a drug, Gino. Yep. Here's a little taste. Here's a little taste. You want more? Just wait a little bit. We'll give you some more.
Oh, later. Are you kidding me? The Monday after the Super Bowl, whoever wins it. Okay, let's see here. Who will they open up on the opening Thursday night?
That's right.
I will be ready.
Amazing. PJ Glasser is the host of Send It In on the BetQL Network. Love having PJ on, and he can give us some insight on this Baltimore Ravens team that the Bills will be facing on Sunday, being that he is in Baltimore. PJ Glasser will give us his favorite plays from the divisional round of the NFL, and we want to have a chance to talk to PJ before the national championship, so we'll get his take on that as well here between Notre Dame and Ohio State. The great PJ Glasser joins us next on The Fan.
You're listening.
Bills back at practice today. Offensive lineman Alec Anderson and running back Ray Davis were limited. Everyone else practicing fully, including the kick returner Brandon Codrington. Head coach Sean McDermott on the Bills' run defense.
It's really the staff. I think has done a really good job. The defensive staff, led by Bobby, and then the players have really taken to the level of detail and technique that you have to have. I think that's really where it starts, and that's probably the lion's share of it.
Bills and Ravens coming up 6:30 on Sunday. We're going to talk to PJ Glasser, your host of Send It In on the BetQL Network, coming up next year in the Sports Bar. Buffalo Sabres hockey tonight. They're coming off that bad loss to Seattle where they gave up 6 straight goals. Sabres taking on Carolina. Coverage begins right after the Sports Bar at 6 p.m. tonight. TV side, it's on TNT. Gene Battaglia, the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
Pull up a stool and join us. 585-866-4FAN. 866-432-6. The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
They had a game plan against us that was pretty good, so making sure that we're covering those bases and figuring out, what to adjust and how to fix some of those things. At the same time, what have they had success on the last few weeks, and not sure what they're going to do. Well, I guess we'll find out Sunday, but we'll prepare for anything and everything that we can and just try to go out there and execute.
All right, let's try to dive in a little bit deeper into this match between the Bills and the Ravens. We go to Baltimore, and we're joined by the host of Send It In, Odyssey Sports betting insider PJ Glasser. Insider calls presented by BetMGM. Go check out all the latest lines today on the BetMGM app. PJ, I'm sure you're going to be talking about it the rest of this week into this weekend. It's the marquee matchup of the divisional round of the NFL playoffs, Bills and Ravens, and we want to start right there with you. I mean, the way the Ravens looked against the Steelers, the way they've looked down the stretch here against less than superior opponents, and I guess you could say the same thing about the Bills. We know what happened in Week 4. We know what the Bills did last week to Denver. Let's just chop it up, man. Let's start talking Lamar versus Josh Allen. This is it, bud.
It is, and it should be a great game, guys, right? I think, for me, what stood out the most about the Bills-Denver game, we'll start there. I was so impressed with how well Buffalo ran the ball on first down. It felt like pretty much the entire game they were in 2nd and 2, 2nd and 3, 2nd and 4. And when Josh Allen's your quarterback and you're living in that kind of down and distance, it makes life impossible for a defense and one as good as Denver, And then on top of that, obviously the way they were able to respond after the first drive when Denver scored the touchdown. To me, that's kind of the story of this game, guys. Buffalo had so much success running the ball on first down that they really were never in like 3rd and 8, 3rd and 11 for much of the game. Well, they're going up against the number 1 rush defense by far in the NFL on Sunday. So it's going to be really important for the Bills to establish a ground game with James Cook because Josh Allen in his career has not really lit up the Ravens defense. He's played them 4 times, and he's never thrown for more than 215 yards. All these games tend to be lower scoring. Now, obviously, we've never had this version of Lamar, this version of Josh, and with their teams playing this well going at it this late in the season. So I would expect him to throw for more yards than that, but it just is worth noting that he has struggled, obviously, against the Ravens defenses in the past. And to me, guys, that's the key to the game. If the Bills are able to run the ball with James Cook, then I think they're going to have a good chance of winning the game.
See, it's funny. Like, I view the other side of the ball, PJ, meaning who scares you more? Is it Lamar Jackson or is it Derrick Henry? Look, Lamar Jackson probably is going to win the MVP. I'll just kind of say that. But he's having a fantastic year. It's Derrick Henry. To me, Derrick Henry is the guy that can control this game, control the clock. And PJ, when you look at the history between the Bills and Derrick Henry dating back to his time in the Titans, it's really not good from the Buffalo side.
Yeah, I mean, Derrick had his best rushing game of the year, guys, against Buffalo back in that Week 4 matchup. So it all started obviously with that first play of the game where he went for like 85 yards or whatever it was. It's Derrick. It's essentially both of them, and you saw that against Pittsburgh because when they run that zone read, the Steelers decided early on in that game they were going to try to eliminate Derrick, right? They were not going to let Derrick beat them, So Lamar was just reading the defense, and every time Watt, who was the guy mostly that would collapse, Lamar would just take it around the edge, and he would run for 7, 8 yards, whatever it would be. So then Pittsburgh adjusts, and then they're trying to play a guessing game, and then Baltimore, it felt like wherever Pittsburgh was going, either Lamar would keep it and he would go for big yardage, or Derek would keep it and or Derek would take the handoff, and you saw him kind of break off some big runs. So that's going to be the key to the game, guys. I'm going to be honest with you. If the Ravens play their game, and if they had the game plan that they did against the Steelers, and if they truly commit to the run and they execute, that they're gonna win the game. There's a reason why the Ravens are favored. There's a reason why they're power rated among all the sports books as the number one team in the NFL. It's because when they're clicking and they're rolling and they're playing their game, they're the toughest team to stop. So that's what it comes down to. If they don't abandon the run, which we saw them do against Kansas City last year in the AFC Championship game, if they have that game plan that they did against Pittsburgh, it's going to be tough for Buffalo to slow them down.
Couple of thoughts then. So it's vital, I think, that the Bills get off to a hot start, get an early lead, and kind of force Baltimore out of their script, out of their game plan to run the football. And then I also know that a lot of Bills fans, and we've talked about it this week, will point out that in Week 4, you were without 3 of your key starters on defense, in Taron Johnson, Matt Milano, and Terrell Bernard. While that's not a nothing, it doesn't make up for the size difference that you have between Baltimore's offense and the undersized Bills' defense.
No question. Having all those guys is going to be key. And, I do think Buffalo's going to do a pretty good job. I think, guys, motivation is a powerful thing, right? And all Buffalo's hearing all week is obviously about that Week 4 game, and they're hearing about how the Ravens ran all over them and what a bad matchup Baltimore is. So I do think the Bills are going to have a pretty good game plan, and I do think they're going to do a much better job than Pittsburgh did at stopping the Ravens' run. But both defenses, I think it's so fascinating how different they are coming into this game than they were in that Week 4 game. Danger, you mentioned all the injuries that Buffalo had. I mean, at the time that those two teams played, the Ravens had the worst pass defense in the NFL and one of the worst defenses in the NFL. But they made a switch at safety, and instead of having Eddie Jackson and Marcus Williams back there with Kyle Hamilton, they're playing this guy now, Darius Washington, who completely changed their defense. He has allowed Kyle Hamilton to play back further, and Washington has been the guy around the line of scrimmage, and it has just been night and day, and that's why Baltimore has been playing so much better on that side of the ball the last 7-8 games. So not only is the Bills' defense going to be better and obviously way different than we saw in that game, guys, but the Ravens' defense is going to be different as well. So again, that Week 4 game, maybe you can take from it something, but these teams are so different. The game's in Buffalo. It's much colder temperatures. It's the playoffs. And also the spot, too, I don't think it's getting talked about enough. The Bills were 3-0. The Ravens were 1-2. That was a really big game for them because they had Cincinnati on deck the next week. So the Ravens kind of needed that game a lot more than the Bills did, kind of showed early on in that game. So, it's fascinating kind of seeing, how when that game was played now and obviously heading into the playoffs here.
PJ, I hope this game doesn't come down to a missed kick. Now, from the Buffalo side, Tyler Bass, he beats the Dolphins on a 61-yarder. He's also missed 7 extra points. But you've watched every Ravens game here. What's the confidence level of Justin Tucker right now coming into this game?
It's the million-dollar question, Gene, and I'm so glad you bring this up because I can tell you guys right now, if Justin Tucker misses a field goal, I will be live betting the Buffalo Bills because nothing good happens when Tucker misses a kick. It just doesn't. They've been on this win streak. They won their final 4 games of the regular season. They beat the Steelers. Tucker hasn't missed a kick. He's made all his field goals, made all his extra points. That's just how it goes. When he misses kicks, it's just like it's such a momentum shift, and it's almost so deflating because it's so shocking when he does miss, and it just flips the game on its head. So obviously when these two teams met in the playoffs, back in 2020 or 2021, Tucker missed a couple of kicks, and it was super windy that day, and it was a lower scoring game. And, if he makes those kicks, maybe things are a little bit different. So, Gene, I'm glad you bring that up because I know Bills are obviously concerned about Bass, like you said. Ravens fans, we really haven't seen Tucker, need to make like a real pressure kick yet ever since he missed those couple against Philadelphia. But I can tell you guys right now, as soon as Tucker misses a kick, the game's going to completely change. So that's going to be a massive part of this game. If he's making his kicks, good sign for the Ravens. If he's missing them, great sign for the Bills.
And, PJ, as far as Zay Flowers goes, no practice today, so that would mean that we're behind the eight ball for him even getting on the field on Sunday. And if he does, he's probably not 100%. Is he a factor at all when we consider the Ravens' desire to run the football?
Not too much of a factor. And honestly, guys, I said this against the Steelers, and I don't think it was a big a deal against the Steelers. It's a bigger deal against the Bills because I do think they're going to need to throw more against Buffalo. But not having Zay out there, I think even puts more of a premium and more of a reminder on the Ravens to run the football. I just remind themselves not to get away with that. I will say, guys, if Zay is ruled out, Isaiah Likely is a must bet. You got to bet his receiving yards, anytime touchdown. He's the guy who benefits most from Zay being out because Andrews then slides more into that receiver role a little bit, help Bateman on the outside, and then Likely, even though he's tight end number 2, he essentially becomes tight end number 1 in that offense, takes over all those routes that Andrews excels at. And, I mean, you saw a little bit of that against Pittsburgh, where he had 4 catches for 53 yards, especially if the Ravens are running the ball and they get the Bills to respect that and they get those linebackers to suck in. I mean, that's just going to open up things for Likely. So as soon as I see that Zay Flowers is ruled out because I'm expecting him not to play, Isaiah Likely over receiving yards is going to be my first bet.
PJ Glass, your host of Send It In daily on the BetQL network, where PJ, we got to give you kudos for that amazing stat you laid on us last week, where going into the week, it was teams that missed the postseason the previous year that are going on the road as favorites. Since 2017, we're 1-14, and wouldn't you know, both of the favorites that fit into that category lost. One of the teams that beat them, the Houston Texans, and now the Texans are, well, they're meat here for Kansas City, right? 8.5 points. Tell me that the Texans are going to pull off this miraculous upset, PJ, please.
God, wouldn't we all love it? Could you imagine if the winner of Ravens-Bills gets a home game next week against the Texans? That would be something. I would truly be shocked. Truly be shocked. In professional sports, I think there are a few things that really shock you, but I think the Texans beating the Chiefs, that would guys, what would we equate that to in the NCAA tournament? Would that be a 3-14? Would that be a 2-15? Is that crazy enough to say?
I think that would be, you can't say 1-16, but I think a 2-15. If the two-time defending Super Bowl champs lose to a depleted Texans team, and here's the other thing I don't like about that. I mean, Houston kind of won in a quirky sort of way. They can't rely on pick sixes and that sort of thing against Kansas City.
Right. So, I mean, I'm with you guys. And, Kansas City's obviously been in this spot before, have the number 1 seed. We all know how good Andy Reid is off a bye. Here's the way I'm attacking this game, guys. And I've been on your show long enough. I love my narrative plays. I think Kansas City is going to come out in this game and just firing on all cylinders, right? I think they're going to go down the field on their first drive. We're all going to be sitting back and watching this game, and it's going to be surgical. It's going to be like clockwork, and the Chiefs are going to look like the Chiefs, and we're just all sitting back, and we're just going to all be like, oh God, they're just, who's beating this team, right? It's going to be one of those. If you shop around, you can find Kansas City to score a touchdown on their first drive at plus 270. And I really like that. I just think the Chiefs, they've heard all the talk. They haven't played since Christmas. They have been waiting for the playoffs. They've been saving all their ammo and the bullets for this time of the year. And I just think they're going to come out guns blazing against Houston. So that's kind of the way I'm approaching this game. If you had to make me bet it, full game, would also lean Kansas City minus the 8.5, like a Texans team total under as well. I mean, outside of Nico Collins, who scares you on that Texans offense? Spags knows that. They got one of the best corners in McDuffie. So I think Texans are going to have a tough time moving the ball on Kansas City. I like their team total under. Would have leaned Chiefs 8.5, but guys, I really like Kansas City first offensive drive, them to score a touchdown.
All right, so the widest spread of the weekend actually is in Detroit, where the Lions host the Commanders. Does the Jaden Daniels magic end in Motor City?
I think it does, but man, is it scary betting against that guy with that many points, right? Like he just finds ways, guys, every single week. I was so impressed with how Washington won that game last week because not only is he a rookie on the road, but they were completely one-dimensional. They had no running game. They couldn't get anything going on the ground. So for him to be in his first playoff game on the road, for that game to be tight, and for him to have no run game and still find a way to win it, I mean, it just speaks to how good he is. That's why I think they could have a little bit of success against Detroit because the Lions obviously have all those injuries on the D-line, and Tampa's got Vita Vea, one of the best run stoppers. So Commanders should be able to maybe find a little bit of success on the ground and control a little bit of clock. I just worry, guys, about these kind of teams like Washington when it feels like they have that like team of destiny vibe to them, right? And they're finding all these different ways to win. Eventually, you just run into a buzzsaw and you just run into a juggernaut. And like that's what Detroit is. Kind of saw that with NC State in the tournament this past year. They have that Cinderella run to the Final Four. Well, then they go up against Zach Edey and Purdue. And this is kind of what that feels like, you know. They've been getting by. They've been winning all these games in all these different ways, but it just kind of feels like they're up against it in this one. So, look, I get it. It's a lot of points, and Jaden's just been finding a way to keep all these games close. But if you're asking me who I would take, I would look at Detroit -9.5.
Yeah. So who is the team, PJ, that ends up going to the NFC Championship game? Is it Philadelphia? Is it the LA Rams? And you may do this with your friends sometimes. I did this to Danger, the blind test here. Okay. Hey, Rams, Eagles, Danger, what's the line? And Danger tells me, oh, well, let's see. Eagles by 2. No, it's Eagles by 6. Were you surprised that the Rams are getting this many points?
I wasn't, just because, again, we have to remember, I don't think you can really understate enough just how different the Rams are when they're outside, especially in cold weather, right? Especially Stafford. I mean, this is a guy who's been a dome quarterback his whole career, whether it was in Detroit and L.A. And guys, like nobody's talking about the fact that in the last 4 games for the Rams, their defense has given up less than 10 points in all those games. They gave up 9 to Minnesota, 9 to Arizona, 9 to the Jets, and 6 to San Francisco on that Thursday night game. Ever since that game against Buffalo, that was 44-42. I mean, the Rams' defense has been insane. The problem is their offense hasn't really mustered much either. And you look at those 2 games where they played on the road at San Francisco, where you remember when it was rainy, and then they played at the Jets when it was cold outside. The offense didn't do much. They scored 12 points and 19 points. So I kind of think it's going to be similar to what we saw with Philadelphia and Green Bay. Eagles are just going to run the ball. They know they're really not going to need much from Hurts in the pass offense, and I think the Rams are going to have a tough time scoring. So I get it. It's Stafford, McVay. They won a Super Bowl. They look great against Minnesota. But guys, traveling across the country, playing outdoors in cold weather against that defense, I think it's going to be tough. So favorite bet is Rams team total under 19.5. That's the thing I feel best about. Rams can certainly cover, and it could be a low-scoring game, but I can't see them scoring more than 20. So I'll take Rams team total under 19.5.
By the time we talk to you next week, PJ, we will have crowned a national champion in college football. Before we let you go, what do you think about Monday with Notre Dame here, 8-point underdogs against Ohio State in the national championship?
I like the Buckeyes, guys, -8.5. I will say if you like Notre Dame, you've got to correlate it to the under. That's their only path into this game. You look at, obviously, the way Michigan was able to beat Ohio State, 13-10. Penn State lost 20-13. Nebraska lost 21-17. This is the blueprint for Notre Dame. This is how you hang around in the game against Ohio State. You force turnovers. You run the ball, you play good defense, you muck it up, and you keep it ugly. They're just not going to be able to go toe-to-toe with that Ohio State offense. It concerns me that Notre Dame won on a game-winning field goal against the Penn State team that didn't complete a pass to a wide receiver, and now you got to go up against Ohio State with all those weapons that they have on the outside. I just think it's a little bit of a mismatch. You know, Ohio State's defense is just so good. I think Notre Dame's going to have a tough time moving the ball. And then offensively, you know, there are 2 corners. One's a sophomore, one's a freshman, and they're going to play man coverage. Texas wants to go zone. They mix things up. Notre Dame, they're a man team, and they want to man you up on defense. And I think it would be a bad message for Marcus Freeman to send his corners that we've been playing a certain way all year, and now just because we're going up against a team with great receivers, we're going to do something different, right? I don't think he wants to send that message. So I think Notre Dame's going to play their game, and I don't necessarily know if that's a good thing. I think it's a bad matchup. So I'll lay it with Ohio State, -8.5.
PJ Glasser, your host, is Send It In. PJ, for folks who haven't checked it out yet, tell everybody about it.
1 to 1:30 p.m. Eastern, guys. You can check us out Mondays through Fridays on the BetQL network. We're also streaming live on twitch.tv/BetQL, YouTube, search Odyssey Sports. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts. You can search Send It In. And, man, do we have a great episode today. A guy by the name of Gene Battaglia was on the show today. So make sure you check that one out. Always a lot of fun.
You're the best, PJ. Thanks for the time, and let's see how it plays out this weekend. We'll talk to you next week and recap.
Going to be a heck of a game, guys. Regardless of who wins, let's just beat the hell out of Kansas City, right? That's all that matters.
Well, hopefully you're not worried about Matt Milano.
Matt Milano. I'll see you guys.
Later. It's PJ Glasser, the host of Send It In, Odyssey Sports Betting Insider, and Insider Calls presented by BetMGM. Go check out all the latest lines today on the BetMGM app.
Listen, it's like you're going to have the Baltimore host saying the Ravens will win, and I'm saying the Bills will win. So we all have our biases, I suppose.
We haven't talked about which team has more pressure on them come Sunday, and I wanted to kind of dive into that a little bit next, if we may.
All right.
And I also think there's another thing to pay attention to when you're watching on Sunday, and it has everything to do with the decisions being made by Sean McDermott and how he wants to manage his defense against the Ravens.
Bill Belichick said something today, and I think he's wrong. I think he's absolutely wrong. And a promotional idea here in the sports bar. We have enough time to plan this.
Okay.
It's an idea that was brought up to us online, and I want to run this past you, Mike Danger, see if this is something that everybody in Rochester can get behind here.
Kevin Ostreicher of the Locked On Ravens podcast scheduled to join us in the 4 o'clock hour as well. We're going to take a quick break and come back. We have time for your calls. If you want to pull up a stool, feel free. 866-4326-585, 866-4FAN.
Rochester, the sports leader. 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester. An Odyssey sports station. The Fan, Rochester. Sports update.
Bills back at practice. Alec Anderson and Ray Davis were limited. Everyone else practicing fully today, including the kick returner, Brandon Codrington. It didn't go so well for the Bills last time against the Ravens back in Week 4. Head coach Sean McDermott on what he took out of that game.
I mean, I think you always try and learn from the past the best you can, and there's a lot of lessons that we were taught in that game. So we got to make sure that we have a good week of practice, prepare like we need to prepare.
We'll take a look at the Ravens. Kevin Ostreicher from the Locked On Ravens podcast joining us later this hour. The Sabres coming off a loss where they gave up 6 straight goals to Seattle. They're back in action tonight taking on Carolina. Our coverage will begin right after the Sports Bar at 6 on TV tonight. It's on TNT. Gene Battaglia, the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
It's going to take a heck of an effort from our football team to go up against this football team and what they have and what they bring to the table on all 3 phases.
I know Derrick Henry is the poster boy. He is the player that I am most fearful of, and it's going to be tough. And it starts this week, and I do think that the winner of this game wins the Super Bowl.
Mike Danger.
But I guess my question is, can the Bills get penetration against that Ravens offensive line? Can they use their speed? Because from a size standpoint, I have a hard time believing that any team in the league is going to match up well against the size that the Ravens offense provides.
Gene Battaglia.
There's never been a Bills home playoff game where they've been an underdog. And this year, against a team that sure you lost to earlier in the year, but you ended up having a better record, I'm just a little kind of surprised. I'm wondering how that's going to kind of play out there in the locker room as the week goes on.
95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
So much to get to in Hour 2 of the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia. We're glad you're with us. However you're enjoying the show, we're in the free-to-download Odyssey app. If you're driving around listening, 95.7 FM, AM 950, you can even watch the Sports Bar. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Fan Rochester. We have Kevin Ostreicher of the Locked On Ravens podcast joining us here in about 20 minutes or so. We'll learn more about the Ravens' preparation for the Buffalo Bills here, the divisional round matchup coming up on Sunday, a game you'll be able to hear on the Fan Rochester with our pregame coverage getting underway at 9 a.m. Sunday morning. And the question I ask you, Gino, is which team going into this game has more pressure on them?
You can make an argument either way because you have 2 quarterbacks, for right or for wrong, that have yet to get to the Super Bowl. So I'm not copping out when I say this. I would say it's equal. Now, you tell me, try to sway my opinion.
I think it's obviously the Bills. Obviously the Bills. Because if you lose on Sunday, all we're going to be talking about on Monday is how you've lost now 3 straight home divisional losses, 3 different AFC opponents. These are all opponents you need to get by if you're going to win the Super Bowl. And if you're in the wins aren't a quarterback stat crowd, what would a loss mean for Josh Allen? He's not Mahomes. No one playing right now is, because nobody can say they've got the rings that Mahomes has. He's, on that Brady level, that Manning level of quarterback tier right now. He's not Lamar. Lamar 2, likely 3 MVP awards. He's not even Joe Burrow, who actually made it to a Super Bowl. So what does it mean for Josh Allen? I don't know that there's any shame if you do beat Baltimore and you go into Kansas City. If you lose to Mahomes and Arrowhead, I don't know that there's any shame in that. Manning, you look back at his career, he lost to Brady at Foxborough plenty. But a loss by Josh Allen and the Bills on Sunday means at this stage of his career, he's Warren Moon. He's an incredible quarterback.
No.
He's an incredible quarterback. We should be talking more about Warren Moon because he was amazing when he played. He just never won any of the big games. Wins might not be a quarterback stat, Gino, but winning is at minimum, albeit the high standard, quarterback wins are everything. They got to get this win. I think they have more pressure on them than the Ravens.
How many times has Josh Allen been to the AFC Championship game?
1.
How many times has Lamar Jackson been to the AFC Championship game?
None. No, one last year, yeah.
Yeah, it's no different, the argument. What you're saying, also applies. In fact, I would say it even more applies to Lamar Jackson. 1, 2, and we think a third MVP. You're the 3-time MVP who's been to one AFC championship game, and we got you Derrick Henry, and you still couldn't get to it?
Now,
Baltimore might be the answer to me.
If we look at the teams, we can put the quarterbacks aside, and let's look at the coaches, and let's look at the teams, right? Like, less pressure on Harbaugh. He's already got a Super Bowl.
Right. From a
team standpoint, when you look at what Harbaugh has done in his accomplished career as coach of that team versus what McDermott has done, McDermott has a lot of pressure on him to win this game. Again, what does the world look like if they lose on Monday when we're here and we're assessing blame if they lose? I mean, we're going to be pointing right at McDermott.
We'll be pointing at McDermott maybe because he didn't address special teams as he should. Where we see there's going to be changes coming up next year.
Well,
and is that going to, ta-da?
If I can continue, because I think when we talk about McDermott, pay attention to what the Bills do on defense on Sunday, because we know this about McDermott and his defense. They love that base nickel. They like treating Taron Johnson like a linebacker, and I'm telling you, that is going to get crushed by the Ravens. The physical matchup for the Bills in this game and their front seven is atrocious. Now, while not having Milano, Johnson, or Bernard back in week 4 isn't a nothing, it doesn't make the Bills larger. It doesn't make them bigger. I'm looking for bigger bodies in that front 4 on Sunday. I'm looking for Jordan Phillips to show up. I don't know why the Ravens wouldn't live and die by the run on Sunday, just given this mismatch that they have presented to them with McDermott's ability to adjust here when needed. That's a massive X factor in whether or not this defense can get off the field, whether or not the Bills win the game.
I think that Taron Johnson against one of the 2 tight ends, that's the concern to me. Like the wide receivers for you play man in this game, and they flashed up just now an ESPN graphic. Like since week 16, the Bills have played 40% man. This was always, think about that. This was always your Tampa 2 kind of quasi thing. It's been a lot different. Look, it's one of those topics, Danger, where you're not right and I'm not right. Well, either you or I will be right. Whoever has the most pressure is the team that loses, and we'll come back, and the world will not look so great for that team. Bill Belichick has a bold prediction.
Is he talking again?
Oh, he's been talking.
I thought he's been recruiting.
Gray. Yeah, he's still doing his media tour. And listen, I saw this come across my feed. Belichick thinks that whoever wins Buffalo-Baltimore will be favored in the AFC Championship game next week. Look, is he indirectly saying Houston's going to pull off an upset? Because that's the only way. Come on, the Chiefs would be a home underdog to either of these teams? No. But let's say he's right. No, I don't want any part of that. I want the Bills to remain underdogs for the rest of the season. Be an underdog this week, be an underdog in Arrowhead, and then be an underdog against the Lions.
I think he's saying that if Buffalo wins, if Buffalo were to win, you could see them being a favorite against the Chiefs based on how they win, right? Like, how do these teams win their games this weekend could result in the road team being a favorite at Arrowhead. Like, you look at Kansas City, Houston, and we all say today, Kansas City should just mop the floor with Houston. But what if it isn't that way? What if they win, but it's a Harrison Butker field goal in overtime, or so? What if they get pushed? And what if we try to explore all of the options that could exist? What if the Bills? What if we're completely underselling the Bills and they come out with some kind of offensive game plan that the Ravens have no idea how to combat and they just can't keep up? And they blow them out and they win by 20 points. Turnovers, whatever. I mean, this is what's crazy about the NFL. Like, nobody's going to predict that. Nobody's going to say Bills are going to win by 3 scores, but it could happen. And if it did happen, then I would say, yeah, maybe the Bills would go or the Ravens would go into Arrowhead and be a road favorite. But I like the Bills having a chip on their shoulder. I think that actually does benefit them going into this game. And it does feel different this year than it did last year. I mean, there was a lot of, we get the Chiefs at home. This is exactly what we want. We got to beat them on our, we're not going to Arrowhead in the postseason this year. And, you had a lot of injuries to deal with, and it wasn't the best game for a lot of Buffalo Bills against the Chiefs. You can exercise a lot of those demons by beating the Ravens on Sunday.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about A.J. Klein in coverage against Travis Kelce. This game, all right?
Correct.
You got everything going out to this. I don't know what to make of this idea switching gears here, as we often do in the sports bar. Our friend Zig Fracassi, who we talk to every hockey season, he brought this up to us. And I don't know why last night. I don't know if he was smoking. I don't know what he was into. But you have to have some imagination to come up with this tweet. Ready? Never too early, Gene and Danger, to plan a show around the 75th anniversary of the Rochester Royals winning the NBA championship. I looked it up. April 18, 2026 will be 75 years since the Rochester Royals beat the New York Knicks in Game 7 of the NBA Finals in 1951. Look, it's not a Francesa, Danger.
Oh, who cares?
No, it's not. People came out for – we did the broadcast. Remember the NFL for the draft, and they were celebrating how many years? And we had the Rochester Jeffersons and the hoopla surrounding it. Honest question, though. How many people in town still are with us that went to a Rochester Royals game?
I feel like did I just black out? What are you talking about?
Stop with this.
You might as well be talking a foreign language. I mean, what are you? Yeah, who's alive that saw? And who are these Rochester Royals you speak of? Do you mean to tell me I'm supposed to believe you when you say that we had an NBA franchise? Or an NFL franchise? What? In this town? Rochester? Rochester? 75 years ago.
It was actually at the arena that you see downtown, the NBA All-Star game. It's still there. You don't have any markings or anything, so therefore it didn't happen.
That's right. I don't believe everything I read on the internet or on X. Zig. What is Zig telling us? Zig's just making stuff up. You're right. He was probably high. Zig was high. He got keyboard muscles. Decided to send us a little tweet about this fictional NBA team that supposedly resided Rochester Royals. It sounds nice. You got alliteration there. It's a good sounding franchise.
Listen,
but come on.
I put this out there, and I know we have more than one listener. My father was a kid then, and he never went to a game. It wasn't like it was today. It was just, how would you describe it today? It's like, oh, yeah, it's in town, but, I've yet to meet the person who actually went to a game.
It wasn't, sports entertainment wasn't a thing. It was just like,
well, college was
a hobby.
Yeah, it was way bigger than.
Right. And I hope everybody knows that I have my tongue in cheek. I'm being sarcastic.
No,
right?
they don't.
But
they
I hope
really
they
think
I hope people realize, I get it, but it just seems so far-fetched to me, given the magnitude of professional sports today versus what they were 75 years ago. It just feels like a foreign concept that Rochester would have an NBA or an NFL team, even though obviously I know they did. I'm having fun. I'm being sarcastic. But the idea that 75 years ago, the Royals, actually won an NBA championship.
They won the first 3 games, lost the next 3, and rallied to win game 7.
Who's the elder statesman of our regulars in the sports bar? It's John from Rochester, right?
I think I asked John one time, and he said no. Well, actually, no, I know why he said no. He's from Buffalo originally, so he never would have come into town to see.
What are you going to tell me next? That Buffalo had an NBA team too?
Well, they did, the Braves.
Oh, come on. Get out of here.
No, I was a kid. I never went to a Braves game, though.
Well, that would have been, let's see, you'd have to be like 85 to even have a sniff of being alive for that championship game, right? You're 10 years old and you remember it. Do we have any 85-year-olds? What's the phrase you use? Octogenarians?
Yeah. Or, listen, they were here till 57, so maybe somebody saw them after the championship. I don't know.
Oh, wow. And why did they leave in 1957? Do we know?
Yeah, it was just as simple as I can make more money in Cincinnati, apparently.
Wow.
Yeah, bigger arena.
That part hasn't changed about professional sports. Professional sports has changed a lot in time, but that part is still accurate.
Which kills me because the guy, and this was when he was still alive when I was going, Les Harrison, NBA Hall of Famer. And if you go over to the, what do they call it now, Rochester Business Park, you still have Les Harrison Drive. We honored this guy, and he took the team away from us.
Where's that by? Where's Les Harrison Drive is where?
It's the Rochester Tech Park.
Wait, out in the west side?
Yeah, you know that. It's on It's right
next,
it's across from your country club.
Yeah, I know. Okay. And so we named a street after the guy that relocated our professional basketball team.
Yeah. Now, I say this respectfully because I realize who's the descendant of Les Harrison. That would be the Dworkins.
Ah.
And so the Dworkins, if you're not familiar, the owners, the old owners of the defunct Rhinos now, they actually own a piece of the Sacramento Kings, and the reason for that was that David Dworkin has all this memorabilia he donated to the Kings. And when they were threatening to move to Seattle, he called up David Stern and said, give me my memorabilia back. And then he said, okay, you know what? I got a different idea. They ran the background on the Dworkins. Why don't you invest in this team? You imagine that, getting the invitation to invest in an NBA team? Mm-hmm. So I've reached out to Wendy and I said, hey, do you want to do a 75th party, 75th anniversary party? And she hasn't gotten back
That's
to me yet.
April 18th, so that'll be 2026.
Yes.
Next April.
Next April.
We got a lot of time to work this one out. A lot of time. I mean, what does a 75th birthday party, a 75th anniversary party for the Rochester Royals winning the NBA championship look like in your mind's eye?
Well, I started off with this, but quickly ruled it out. Is there a living Rochester Royal?
Okay.
I'm thinking there's not.
It'll be April, so we probably want to be indoors somewhere. Do we get can we replicate what the old arena looked like? Because you said this wasn't at Blue Cross Arena. They didn't play at Blue Cross Arena.
That was at the Edgerton Sports Park, which now it's a community center. So could we do something with the city of Rochester at the community center just to kind of say this actually happened? Would the NBA say, you know what, we're going to invest in this community, or we're going to make, I don't know.
Well,
could we do something?
First thing that we'll cross off is the city of Rochester. City of Rochester can't pave roads. We're not going to work with the city of Rochester to try and commemorate this occasion here, the 75-year anniversary of the Royals winning the NBA championship, which would be next April 18th, 2026. Yeah, we'll have to workshop this a little bit. I think there might be something we can do. We'd have to invite Zig in for noting it. And if Zig, if you're listening and you're coming in, buddy, give me some of what you're taking when you're rifling off tweets about the Rochester Royals on X.
Our number, 866-4FAN, 866-4326. Mike in Sodas Bay. Mike, tell me you were in a Royals game.
Never, but my dad was. And so, and Edgerton Park is where the arena was before they built the War Memorial.
Right.
So my dad used to go to the games at Edgerton, which is why Les Harrison Drive is over that way, because that's over by where the arena was. But my dad always maintains this town couldn't handle the Amerks and the Royals, and when the Amerks started, they started to fill up, and the Royals fans went down.
Yeah, that's the story there, that the attendance went down even though you won a championship.
So imagine a world where minor league hockey, the AHL, was actually more popular in this market than an NBA team. The NBA was nothing. The NBA was absolutely a shell of what it is today. That's fascinating. I don't believe a word you just said, Mike, but thank you for sharing that cool story, bro.
Thanks, guys.
You got it. There's Mike in Sodas Bay. I'm kidding. Listening, that guy's crazy. He doesn't think that we had an NBA. Of course we had an NBA. I get it.
Yeah, and then the follow-up from Zig. Can you also intertwine how the Royals got the Ice Capades instead of Bill Russell?
Oh, here comes another cool story. Tell me about this. What, you mean to tell me we could have had one of the NBA's legends playing in Rochester, but we didn't do it?
So the Royals had the #1 overall pick. And Red Auerbach's, Les Harrison, like, hey, you want to make money. I've got the Ice Capades in Boston booked for this week. I'll pay for the Ice Capades, and you will sell out there in Little Rochester just if you give me the #1 pick.
We traded the #1 overall pick for the Ice Capades. And if you're listening and you're like, what are the Ice Capades? I don't even know. It's a show of ice skaters. That's it.
That's it. It was yesterday's version of Disney on Ice,
right,
I guess, yeah.
Right. Professional ice skaters just skating on ice. Fancy moves. Ice Capades. What an attraction. What a draw. Let's give up the first overall pick in the draft so that the Celtics can have Bill Russell. Fan-freaking-tastic. While we're at it, let's build a fast ferry. That's a good idea.
Bill Russell would have saved the NBA in Rochester.
You can't joke about that.
No, it would have been something.
Right. It wouldn't have been a nothing. Amazing. Thanks, Zig. Can't wait to get Zig back on with us so we can talk about this. Start planning the 75th anniversary of the Rochester Royals. We'll have a Charleston dance competition at halftime. We'll be giving away the Certified Loving Cup to the winning couple. What else can we do? Popcorn, peanuts, celebrities.
We can take the subway to the game.
Oh, you okay, right. We had a Subway, too. Go sell that somewhere else, pal. Kevin Ostreicher is the host of the Locked On Ravens podcast. And we're going to get into this matchup between the Bills and the Ravens, talk a little bit more about what's cooking there in Baltimore with Kevin next on the Fan Rochester. Pull up a stool and join us just like John from Sodas, just like Mike from Sodas Bay just did at 585-866-4FAN. 866-4326.
Odyssey has sports for every Fan Rochester Sports Update.
Bills back at practice getting ready for the divisional round. Alec Anderson and Ray Davis were limited. Davis still in the concussion protocol. Everyone else practicing fully, including kick returner Brandon Codrington. The Bills are going to need the run defense to be on point in this game, says head coach Sean McDermott.
It's really the staff, I think, has done a really good job. The defensive staff, led by Bobby, and then the players have really taken to the level of detail and technique that you have to have. I think that's really where it starts, and that's probably the lion's share of it.
We'll take a look at the Ravens coming up next. Kevin Ostreicher from the Locked On Ravens podcast will join us. Buffalo Sabres are home tonight taking on Carolina. Coverage begins a little earlier tonight at 6 o'clock. Television moving this one up. Tonight it's on TNT. Amherst are back in action Friday, first of 3 games in 3 days. They take on Lehigh Valley. Gene Battaglin, the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan Rochester.
Straight up with no chaser. You're in the sports bar with Danger and Battaglia on the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
I see the comparison or the parallels. They probably end there, though, in terms of the uniqueness of both players, right? And not shortchanging either of them. I mean, they're the best. They're the top shelf in the NFL. Those two, and I mean, it probably isn't fair to compare them from a skill set standpoint. Although they are both extremely skilled, they're both unique in their own ways.
Buffalo Bills head coach Sean McDermott. Josh Allen versus Lamar Jackson Sunday night. Bills and Ravens, we welcome in from the Locked On Ravens podcast, Kevin Ostreicher. And this matchup is so much more than just the 2 MVP candidates, Kevin. We want to break it down with you and talk about how different these two teams are from the last time they faced each other in Week 4.
Oh, yeah, they're extremely different. And I think that goes both ways, where with Baltimore, obviously, this defense was nowhere near where it is now. They still had guys playing that, either now aren't on the roster or not in the rotation whatsoever, and were contributing to a lot of Baltimore's problems. And then obviously on the Buffalo side, they were missing a lot of key defenders. And that obviously plays a big part in how the Bills tried to stop the Ravens' run game, which clearly in Week 4 they did not do a good job of. So I think that, Week 4 you can always take away something from those early season matchups, but I think, both these teams would be fools to, completely expect that script to happen again, because, we're about 4 months removed from that now. And I think where Baltimore was at that point and where Buffalo was, that was a 1-2 Ravens team that could not afford to drop to 1-3, and the Bills were undefeated at that point, and they had a really strong start to their year. So I think that, you can always look at nuances and certain things and player tendencies when looking at film from those games, but of course, this is a whole new matchup come January.
Yeah, the idea that early in the year, you can throw on the Ravens. Look at the secondary. Kevin, how have they used Kyle Hamilton differently, if you can explain?
Yeah, this has been one of the biggest changes of the defense and one of the main reasons why we've seen such a big turnaround here in Baltimore. They love to use Kyle Hamilton all over the field, but they have now, with the changes, moved him back and moved him to be just kind of that traditional guy back there next to Ardarius Washington, who was another move that they made, replacing Marcus Williams, putting Washington in there. And it has simplified things for everybody, and it's not just for Hamilton, who was not having a bad season before being moved, but Roquan Smith has talked about how he had to be the big communicator at all 3 levels of the defense, with Kyle Hamilton doing his roam role. And with Hamilton back there and being more of a communicator on the back end, it has simplified everything for the defense. And that really was the issue for Baltimore earlier in the season. It was more so communication issues, miscommunications, not getting to the right spots, guys taking on wrong blockers or not filling holes correctly in gaps. So now that Hamilton has been moved back, it's not like they don't use him in different spots on the field at different points in the game. But, you would see him a lot more up towards the line, or a lot more as a blitzer off the edge from the safety position, where now it's, again, that more traditional role next to Ardarius Washington. And, he still has so much value there. He's a jack of all trades, do-it-all player, and in any role you put him in, he's going to excel.
When we talk about the matchups in this game, when you look at the Bills' defense, they're undersized. A lot of teams would be undersized against what the Ravens' offense brings to the table. the last time the Ravens lost. It was to Philadelphia, and Philadelphia, to their credit, has a physical, large front four of their defense. Does Buffalo have anything to your eyes, Kevin, that matches up with that? I mean, if am I crazy in believing that if Sean McDermott just stays in his base nickel, that the Ravens are going to have their way and be able to kind of do whatever they want to do on the ground unless they size up a little bit here?
Yeah, that's been the big conversation point here in Baltimore, and I think that's a good way of putting it, where I think that, the Bills' defensive line, it's a really good matchup for Kansas City. I think that that's kind of where the Bills' defense matches up really well. And it's kind of like the top three teams in the AFC. There's almost this triangle diagram of people think the Bills match up really well with Kansas City. The Chiefs match up really well with the Ravens, and the Ravens match up really well with the Bills. And it's kind of that whole chart. I'm not saying the Bills can't stop the Ravens on the ground. There are certainly ways they can. But as you mentioned, the base and nickel, if they play more so what they're comfortable in, I think that with the way the Ravens will probably try to out-physical them early, assert dominance on the ground, that will probably be a rough way for the Bills to go about things. I think when talking about this matchup, the best way that the Bills and the Ravens can defend against the opposing offense is to keep them off the field. The Bills held the ball for 41 minutes against the Broncos, and the Ravens held the ball for 40 minutes against the Steelers, and that just limits the opportunities. And these are two great quarterbacks, two great running backs, two great offenses. And if you want to truly stop them, have your offense go on a 13-play, 85-yard drive that takes up 8 or 9 minutes, and you can assert dominance that way, keeps the opposing defense on the field and tires them out. But I do think when looking at the Bills, they have talented players. I mean, all three levels, there are talented guys, and we talk about how some of those key guys were missing in the first matchup between these two teams. But it's just Baltimore has a hulking offensive line. Obviously, Derrick Henry is a beast in himself, and, the added element of Lamar with his legs and his arm is something you have to keep in mind. So there are ways Buffalo can stop Baltimore, but if it is more of the same, Buffalo plays that they're comfortable in, I don't love that matchup for them.
Kevin Ostreicher, our guest. He is the host of the Locked On Ravens podcast. Kevin, what's the latest on Zay Flowers, the chances that he'll suit up coming up on Sunday night? And, gosh, if it ends up being a third and long, certainly we know you have the two tight ends, but if Flowers can't go, how does that impact the passing game?
Yeah, so his availability did not practice on Wednesday, so obviously he'll have a couple more chances before Sunday and kickoff. And Zay doesn't have to practice to play, so if he's feeling good enough, he will be able to be out there. I don't know what that role would look like. If it's a decoy or limited snaps, I'm sure it would be limited. But if he's not able to go, you mentioned the two tight ends, but Rashad Bateman is going to be the key here. He scored the touchdown against the Steelers, and the Ravens really didn't have to throw the ball all that much because Pittsburgh had no answer whatsoever for Baltimore's run game. So, I know the saying is if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and Baltimore certainly just ran the ball at will on that Pittsburgh defense. But if there are situations in this Buffalo game, because I do expect this game to be closer than that, I expect it to be a really good game and tightly contested, it's going to have to be up to guys like Rashad Bateman, who has really turned it on this season and has stepped up in ways that Ravens fans and the organization and everybody's been waiting on. But other than that, it's guys like Tylan Wallace, Nelson Aguilar, Tez Walker. They traded for Deontay Johnson midseason, but obviously, as we know, it did not end well in Baltimore. Now we even know it did not end well in Houston for the exact same reason. So I think that, the Ravens, they understood that they needed a depth wide receiver in case this happened. They swung at a guy. They tried to bring in someone that could be a talented player, and he is on the field, but it didn't work. And now we're living in the situation here in Baltimore where they don't have one of their top two wide receivers. That option they brought in did not work out, and now you have to rely on other either underrated or guys that are down on the depth chart to step up, which is the exact situation they were trying to avoid.
Kevin Ostreicher is the host of the Locked On Ravens podcast, joining us in the sports bar Danger and Battaglia on the Fan Rochester. Kevin, jump in on our debate because we were talking earlier with both of these teams and both of these quarterbacks with one AFC championship appearance under their belt, knowing they have to get past Kansas City to ultimately get to the Super Bowl. Which team has more pressure on them come Sunday?
Such a tough question because I could see either one. I will probably say the Ravens just because overall I know a lot of conversations just if you're talking about Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. I know that both guys haven't gotten to where they've wanted to go, but Josh's stats in the playoffs are better than Lamar's. And, if the Ravens can't make that jump again, and Lamar can't have a good game again, or something happens to the Ravens where they can't advance again. I know if both these teams lose, regardless of how real they are or not, the fan bases, whether it's Baltimore or Buffalo, there will be some, let's run it back. There will be other, let's move on from the coach and let's reset this thing and build around the quarterback and all that. But I think that it's so close because both teams have so much pressure on them because they've been so close. They've been within a game of going to the Super Bowl. But I think when you talk about playoff success, the big thing for me is growth. And if either team loses this game, obviously for Baltimore, the next step in the growth department from AFC Championship would be Super Bowl. For the Bills, they've been to the championship game, but from losing in the divisional, the next step would be AFC Championship. But I just think with the narratives around Lamar Jackson here in Baltimore, and obviously here it's certainly loud, Baltimore has a ton of pressure on them because if they can't make this next jump, they've moved on from their offensive coordinator 2 years ago. Their defensive coordinator left 1 year ago. It's a matter of okay, what's the next step? How can they get over that hump? Both teams need it badly, but obviously only one can advance.
Yeah, there is a similarity between these two teams. It's not fun to talk about players that are kind of struggling, but both kickers have not had a great year. And my question is, were the Ravens at any point this year considering moving on from Justin Tucker? Because here in Buffalo, you had Tyler Bass. At one point, they brought in a practice squad kicker, and then he makes a 61-yard field goal. But Tyler Bass has missed 7 extra points this year. Give us right now where you think the head of Justin Tucker and where that kind of stands right now, Kevin.
Yeah, they were never considering a change. It got tough, most definitely. But you could tell that you really were just going to ride it out with Justin Tucker, good or bad. And honestly, with the guys out there, it's who else would you rather trust with the resume and the leg power? And Tucker was definitely in his own head. The Ravens had their bye week come at the perfect time after that Eagles game, and they haven't lost a game since, and Tucker has not missed a field goal since. So I think that was a very much needed reset for him. And at the end of the day, it feels like with what this Ravens team has in the special teams department, that's what they're known for. John Harbaugh being a special teams guy and coming in nearly 20 years ago at this point, which is crazy to think about. But that's been the Ravens' MO. And over the last couple of seasons in multiple different aspects, they've struggled there at times. Sam Cook retires and Jordan Stout has been up and down, their new punter. They've had issues in the punt return game all season. And you kind of early in the year watch, in my opinion, the greatest kicker of all time just struggle the way that he was. It was eye-opening and shocking to see that all happen. So Baltimore has a lot on their plate. And, Justin Tucker's a guy that you have to kind of ride with him. And if he still had struggled after the bye week, there would have to be conversations had, but luckily he was able to turn it around. And I think that, maybe there's not full confidence back within the fan base because of what happened early in the season, and maybe there's scars there, but he's been lights out ever since they came back from that.
Kevin, we talk a lot about what Lamar can do offensively, what Derrick Henry can do offensively. There's a name I want to throw at you, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Ravens find a way to get Justice Hill more involved in the screen game.
No, don't suggest that.
I'm just throwing it out there. I mean, this is a guy with a lot of speed, obviously, and the Bills have been vulnerable to these kind of perimeter attacks. Not that they would need to even entertain that, of course, because they have Derrick Henry just gashing everybody up the middle. But what is your take on how they may use Justice Hill opposite Derrick Henry here come Sunday?
Yeah, Justice has been one of the unsung heroes of the offense, and he's someone that they can plug in, and obviously he's not Derrick Henry, but you're right. The screen game has been a really big part of his game. They like to send him on wheel routes and just routes in general. As a pass blocker, he's really improved, and he's kind of that Swiss Army knife on the offensive side of the ball that I think a lot of teams would love to have on their side. So he's a nice change of pace option from Derrick Henry, where obviously this is the postseason. You use your best guys. Derrick Henry is this Ravens team. I know there was a lot of conversation, rightfully so, made last season in the AFC Championship game about how the Ravens didn't run the ball enough, and that was kind of their undoing. The Ravens ran the ball 50 times in this game against the Steelers, and I'd expect more of the same, but it's not all just going to be Derrick Henry because Hill also gives you, he's underrated in the speed department. He has burst, and the power that he brings also, he does not shy away from contact. So he's in my opinion, one of the best change of pace options in the NFL. And they missed him when he wasn't on the field for those couple of weeks after he got injured against Pittsburgh, and now he's back and ready to go.
Yeah, I saw this note come across today from Lamar Jackson's presser. He's not going to wear gloves? I mean, I guess that's an option, Tom Brady. I mean, he does know it's going to be somewhere between 8 and 15 degrees come kickoff Sunday night.
Yeah, Lamar's a Florida guy. He's not a fan of the cold, and with the gloves, he said that he tried it out in practice, and it wasn't good, so he's rolling without him. And it's an interesting strategy, but if it's to Lamar's liking and he's not going to throw out the gloves, well, then of course you got to play without him. So I'm sure he'll have hand warmers on deck, and he'll stay by the fan, get the coat on. He said the coat is a really big thing to combat in the cold. So the elements always play a part in some way, shape, or form. Both these teams are going to have very physical game plans in very cold weather. It's going to be smash mouth football, and I think that's one of the big injuries of the game this week.
I kind of love that you brought that up, Gino, because I don't think that's a zero, Kevin. I really think, like, when you're talking about it being as cold as it's going to be on Sunday, and you have a quarterback who's not going to wear gloves, I mean, are you not vulnerable to turnovers? Has Lamar been more – I mean, we know he isn't throwing picks, but has he been more protective of the football in terms of when he is running the ball? Because I could just see him taking a shot to that hand that isn't gloved and that ball hitting the turf.
Yeah, and there's always an element to it, and I think the thing that impacts Lamar more, if we're being honest, is more so rain and wind. I think Lamar hates the cold, and that's very well known, but – in terms of impact, it'll have some level, but some stats is Lamar has the highest passer rating in cold climate games among all quarterbacks. And, even when you talk about the December month, which gets really cold, since 2018, the Ravens are 11-2 in the month of December, and that's the best mark in the NFL. And obviously, Baltimore, unfortunately for Lamar Jackson, is not some tropical city, although I'm sure he wishes it was. So he has experience doing it. Obviously, the Buffalo elements are a whole different animal, and especially with some of the winds that go on there and how cold it can get. But I think that while it's going to impact both quarterbacks for sure, I think it more so will impact the running game, the defenses, and, it's a matter of will. Whichever team has more will at the end of this game is going to win it, whether that's Baltimore or Buffalo.
Yeah. Kevin, I'm going to ask you the question this way because there is a common interest here between Bills fans and Ravens fans is that, it'd be really nice for the Houston Texans to win that game and you get the AFC Championship at home. But there's also this train of thought, at least up here in Western New York, that, hey, if the Bills are able to get by the Ravens and you do get Kansas City, why not try to vanquish? Why not try to, meet and face the guy that has actually beat you up all these years? Is there any talk about that, what it would look like in the AFC Championship game, that maybe it's not such a bad thing to go to Arrowhead overall? Because, honestly, I think back to week 1, you should have won that game at Arrowhead.
Yeah, toe away, Isaiah Likely's toe. And it's exactly right. That's exactly the mindset that this team has. And, speaking to some Ravens players and hearing what they've had to say, they don't want to cakewalk to the Super Bowl. These guys are competitors and they want to be the best. And how you be the best is you beat the best. And, they've said, we don't want some, injured team or, a team that's limping to the finish line. We want to go up and play the best teams here. And this Buffalo matchup is exactly that. Buffalo's a heck of a team. Baltimore's a heck of a team. And you have two of the heavyweights in the AFC facing off. So when you talk about the championship game, I mean, everybody in Baltimore wants to get revenge on Kansas City. Kansas City's had Baltimore's number for the majority of these games with Mahomes and Lamar. And it's an opportunity. Obviously, it'd be a different setting this time around, considering last year was in Baltimore. But, even if you want to talk about that week 1 game, to go back to Arrowhead and try to get your revenge. And I know that you're right. Both these teams definitely want to be the one to take down Mahomes and Andy Reid and advance to the Super Bowl. At Houston, you play the game to play the game. There's always a shot the upset happens, but I'd assume whichever team wins this one between the Ravens and the Bills will go to Arrowhead to try to get rid of those Kansas City demons that have been facing off against them for years.
Kevin, you're always good with your time to join us here in the Sports Bar and talk about your Ravens. Tell us a little bit more about the Locked On Ravens pod, what you're working on this week, what we can check out in anticipation of the game on Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. Locked On Ravens, we're a 5-day-a-week Ravens podcast, plus we do more so, of course, Monday through Friday. We have you covered with daily Ravens episodes coming out at 6 a.m. Eastern time, and then obviously during the season and during the playoffs, we have bonus episodes, and we go live after every game. So win or lose, I will be going live after the final whistle of Ravens-Bills. So if you want the Ravens' perspective on how the game went, or just the Ravens' perspective leading up to the game, you can find it over on Locked On Ravens on YouTube, in video form, or wherever you get your podcasts in audio form.
Kevin, great stuff. Remember doing this a few years ago with you for the first time, and then, of course, in Week 4. Always appreciate you filling us in on what's going on in Baltimore. Thanks for your time today.
Absolutely, guys. Always appreciate you having me.
You got it. There's Kevin Ostreicher, host of the Locked On Ravens podcast, stopping by the Sports Bar Danger in Battaglia. You know, there was something that PJ said earlier, too, that now is stuck in my head. Hey, I get some of these stats stuck in my head, and I just can't, let them go. The idea that in 4 games against the Ravens, Josh Allen has never thrown for more than 215 yards. Eesh.
Yeah, but one was a super windy night. It wasn't the wind game, but you blew out Baltimore in the postseason. We have to remember that, okay? That Lamar was here on a chilly night, and that didn't matter. There was another game where, the Bills started out slow, and if I remember, Josh Allen throws an interception. The Bills are actually down 14-0. And they won that game. They won the game in Baltimore.
In Baltimore, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's Baltimore's a good team. This isn't a game where Josh Allen. You know what? I'd be shocked if Josh Allen threw for more than 300 yards in this game. I don't think that's going to be the MO for Buffalo. I think you want to keep that team off the field. You saw a little dress rehearsal against the Broncos here, meaning this is what you would expect Buffalo's offense to do. Just kind of make sure you're controlling the clock, run the ball well, but where the Broncos kind of offered you something, I think the Ravens offered you something a little more in terms of the run defense. I have a question for you, because thinking about the AFC and this gauntlet that Buffalo, Baltimore, and let's put Kansas City in this category, the team that comes out of the AFC is winning the Super Bowl.
I don't know about that. I could see, if you are allowing yourself to play it out in your head and you're thinking best case scenario for the Bills, you're representing the AFC in the Super Bowl. Who's your opponent? Look at who's remaining.
Well, who's remaining? Okay.
Realistically, let's say it could be Detroit. It could be Philadelphia. Probably, I would say the Rams are a possibility. We're not really giving the Commanders their fair shake. But of those 3 teams, who would present the biggest issue to the Buffalo Bills? To me, it's the Eagles.
Yeah, I was just going to say it is the Eagles, because they offer that style and Saquon. But if you can beat Lamar and Derrick Henry, I mean, when you get to that point of the season, and the Eagles do have some blemishes, certainly. They didn't exactly put away, Green Bay. They should have put them away. I mean, they left them hanging around a little bit. It is the postseason. There's not the big bad bully waiting for you on the other side of the NFC. I guess that's my point. Detroit's a very good team. The Bills just beat them. The Rams, very good team. I'm not sure they make it, number one. Number two, that was a game where the Bills, there were 2 more minutes left on the clock. They might have won.
And you remember last season when the Bills were in Philadelphia. I mean, that was one of the best regular season games of 2023. And the Bills, it took a miraculous field goal in elements for the Eagles to pull that game off.
Gabe Davis turns the wrong way. If he makes
Correct.
You catch the touchdown, you win in overtime.
Isn't it funny how some of those sloppy errors that we just kind of shrugged off those years haven't really happened this year? I'm not trying to jinx anything.
Okay, there's another. I know where you're going with this, because in that game, and we've seen this from time to time, and maybe it's just because Kevin planted the words wheel route in my head. I don't think you have to worry that as much, because you know James Cook is a threat out of the backfield, certainly. But for my money, Ty Johnson is a receiving running back. Receiving downs, if it's 3rd down, he's the guy you're throwing to. So I don't think you have to worry about the James Cook drop, if that's what where you were going with that.
Yeah, I just think that you had a lot of there were several plays in the 2023 season that when you look back and you think about it, like game-defining plays that could have shifted the outcome of a game, like the Philadelphia game. A couple in that game, actually. And you're not seeing as many of those this year. They've cleaned it up. They've tightened it up. And I think, this goes to a quarterback who is making those around him better. He's doing it with Khalil Shakir and Ty Johnson and, a rookie wide receiver. it's been fun to watch through the course of the season. Win or lose on Sunday, you can't say enough about the season Josh Allen had and his ability to elevate the play of those around him. And I think that also includes the offensive line, who, again, they're mauling. They're absolutely mauling. They'll have a challenge against Baltimore, and the rest of this season, as long as they're playing, it ain't going to be easy. Like, I'm not expecting any one-sided affairs moving forward, obviously, with who you have to face in order to get to where you want to go.
Do the Bills do something so radical? You're not taking Taron Johnson off the field. But would he learn a new position here, Danger, perhaps? Would you actually put Dorian Williams out there just a little more?
The thing about the substitutions is I really, all I care about is size. That's really all I'm worried about. I'm worried about size. I'm not worried about who knows where to be and when they need to be there. Like, Dorian Williams has shown through the course of the season his instincts can be a little off. He can over-pursue sometimes. So I'd rather see, the stability of the guys that know Taron Johnson, the Matt Milanos, the Terrell Bernards, and Dorian Williams is there if you need. But I'm more looking up front.
I'm just put your best 11 out there.
I'm more looking up front.
Honestly, Danger, I see up front from the Derrick Henry standpoint, but if you have Lamar, if Lamar's extending drives on third down and you brought up Hill, oh boy, Hill.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one guy we're not talking about here out of the backfield.
Yeah. It's problematic. And the Ravens are playing really, really good football, so it's fair for them to come in with confidence.
It's fascinating to me because, okay, if the Bills pull this off and you got to go to Arrowhead, are we really like, what do you do against Travis Kelce? Oh, my gosh, it's Isaiah Pacheco. No. It's like this feels like a bigger test, does it not?
Yeah. And when you consider that the Ravens, you think about that week 1 game, how their beginning of the season could have looked a lot more different if Likely's toe was in bounds. We're talking about an 0-1 Chiefs team to start the season and a Ravens team that needed that win against the Bills in week 4 to save their season. They were off the rails if they lose that game. Fascinating. It's the NFL, man. It's one hell of a drug. We'll get to happy hour next in the sports bar. And we've got a round of shots to get to.
I feel bad because in the middle of the interview, a gentleman named Robert called back. He had some Les Harrison stories to tell us. So I guess we do have listeners that went to a Rochester Royals game.
Who are the Rochester Royals? What is that? Okay. And he couldn't stay.
I couldn't. I'm like, you're welcome to call back, sir.
I hope he does. I hope he does because I want to learn more about the supposed professional basketball team that we had in Rochester. I just don't believe it. We have time for your calls if you do want to join us at 866-4FAN. That number again, 585-866-4326.
You're listening to And W239BF Rochester. The sports leader. 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester. An Odyssey sports station. The Fan, Rochester. Sports update.
Buffalo Bills back at practice today. Alec Anderson and Ray Davis were limited. Everyone else practiced fully, including kick returner Brandon Codrington. Didn't go so well for the Bills against the Ravens back in Week 4. Bills head coach Sean McDermott on what he took out of that game.
I mean, I think you always try and learn from the past the best you can, and there's a lot of lessons that we were taught in that game. So we got to make sure that we have a good week of practice, prepare like we need to prepare.
This just in, news out of Baltimore. Mike Garofalo is reporting that the Ravens have claimed wide receiver Deontay Johnson off of waivers from Houston. Earlier this season, the Ravens released him. Sabres hockey tonight on The Fan. They're taking on Carolina. Our coverage will begin at 6 o'clock. Amherst back in action Friday against Lehigh Valley. 11 games in the NBA tonight. The Knicks in Philadelphia. Gene Battaglia on the sports leader, The Fan, Rochester.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
It's going to take a heck of an effort from our football team to go up against this football team and what they have and what they bring to the table on all three phases.
I know Derrick Henry is the poster boy. He is the player that I am most fearful of, and it's going to be tough. And it starts this week, and I do think that the winner of this game wins the Super Bowl.
Mike Danger.
But I guess my question is, can the Bills get penetration against that Ravens offensive line? Can they use their speed? Because from a size standpoint, I have a hard time believing that any team in the league is going to match up well against the size that the Ravens offense provides.
Gene Battaglia.
There's never been a Bills home playoff game where they've been an underdog. And this year, against a team that sure you lost to earlier in the year, but you ended up having a better record, I'm just a little kind of surprised. I'm wondering how that's going to kind of play out there in the locker room as the week goes on.
95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
You know, normally on a Wednesday afternoon in the sports bar with Danger and Battaglia, we recap some of what Sean McDermott had to say at his media availability earlier today. Look to point out some McDermott McLies. I don't think we can today. I don't think there are any lies being told when McDermott is talking about this Ravens squad.
No, I would put, zero. I mean, they told like one lie. Like, yeah, Derrick Henry's really good. He's a future Hall of Famer.
Everything that we've talked about with Sean McDermott, every bit of audio that we've shared this afternoon from Sean McDermott, zero lies told. Let's go back to your sports update for a second.
Like, I had to do a double take. This is true. This is happening.
Well, there's a couple things there. One, I think that pretty much signals that Zay Flowers is not going.
Correct.
And two, if Deontay Johnson gets on the field for the Ravens, that's a giant Francesa for me.
Oh, who cares?
I'm not a fan of the player. I think the way he's been unceremoniously let go from all of these teams through the course of the season tells you all you need to know about the player.
But the fact he was suspended by the team, okay, and then the suspension's up, and they just cut him, and now you're bringing back. I can't think of a comp to this.
No.
You're in that locker room. Now, to kind of review, this was a game in Week 13 where Deontay Johnson wasn't part of the game plan, wasn't getting targeted, wasn't on the field, and then which receiver goes down? I believe it's Bateman goes down. And, hey, Deontay, you got to go in. No.
Yeah.
And he's over there standing next to the heat warmer. What do you mean no? You go in. No, I'm not going in. Oh, boy. Okay, well, do you want to be a part of this team? Not. You get suspended for one game, conduct detrimental to the team. You're going to invite that guy back into this locker room? I'm sorry. That just has a whiff of what the heck are you doing? What a weird year for Deontay Johnson. Like, let's review. Carolina traded to Baltimore, released by Baltimore, gets claimed by Houston. Houston, a playoff team. They have an injured wide receiver, too. He lasted all of 3 days in Houston.
He was I think he had a reception in the game against the Chargers, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, but he didn't, and they released him earlier this week.
Yeah, they released him Monday.
And now he's back with the team that suspended him and released him after they traded for him. Hey, I guess if you're the Ravens and you're saying, we gave up something for this guy. We gave up draft capital. We traded for this guy. We may as well bring him back to try and have some sort of value on that deal, because it doesn't look like a good deal when you move on from the guy just a few weeks after trading for him.
Honestly, Danger, this is the way I would kind of do it. And granted, I'm oversimplifying if you're a football coach, okay? But do you trust your two corners in Christian Benford and Rasul Douglas? Yes or no? Because you're not facing Zay Flowers, apparently, if you're making a move like this. And even if he's out there, how good is he actually going to be? Rashad Bateman and whoever is else on the other side, you're doing some creative things with your safeties. This is what it's going to come down to, Danger. Taylor Rapp and Damar Hamlin. I think back to that first run by Derrick Henry. It's Taylor Rapp getting run over, and he didn't last in that game. He went out due to injury. I mean, you talk about the Bills being small, but I'm going to say, hey, Lamar, you're going to have one-on-one coverage to throw against here. Like, take your chances that way. Sell out against the run.
Whew. Man, it's only Wednesday.
Yeah, I'm ready for the game.
It's only Wednesday. What? I think everybody's ready. We're talking a lot of Ravens today with both of our guests, PJ Glasser, who stopped by in the 3 o'clock hour from the BetQL Network, and Kevin Ostreicher of the Locked On Ravens podcast. So we get a little bit more insight on what's going on with Baltimore. Both those conversations happened before we found out Deontay Johnson is back with the team. But if you missed those conversations, you can find us wherever you pod. Search out the Sports Bar and wherever you get your shows, and you'll find us, and that includes the free-to-download Odyssey app. We also want to say a big thank you to everybody watching the Sports Bar today. On our YouTube channel, you can subscribe and like there, and you'll see Gino wearing his knit cap as we're kind of freezing in our studio that doesn't have any heat. Our thermostat has been broken since the summer, and as the temperatures have continued to dip in Rochester, we're feeling it here in the Sports Bar.
Yeah, this is bad. We have big glass windows that we have all covered up here, and no, we're not soft, but heat's a nice thing to have.
If you want to get a little punch of heat on a cold winter day and you want to get ready for the Bills and the Ravens, we're going to invite you out to hang with us as it's Friday Football Talk Live, the playoff edition. That's coming up Friday from 3 until 6. Gino and I broadcasting live from Three Heads Brewing, the Sports Bar, live on Atlantic Avenue in the neighborhood of the Arts, where you can score a 4-pack to go game day. The limited run Leaping Hazy IPA playoff edition. It's only available at Three Heads, and it's only available while they last. That's Friday afternoon. We invite you to stop by for some delicious Three Heads beer, some Freddy's Woodfire pizza. It is your pregame before the pregame a few days early. Friday Football Talk Live, the playoff edition. That's happening Friday from 3 to 6 at Three Heads in the neighborhood of the Arts on Atlantic Avenue, with the Sports Bar on the Fan Rochester.
Yeah, we always have a lot of fun, with those shows, Danger. So invite you to come on out. Big turnout last time. And, if you've never been, Gene, promise not to big league anybody.
Oh, you can't make that promise, pal. You can't make that promise.
Come on.
You cannot make that promise. You have a rich tradition of big-timing people. Even when you don't know you're big-timing people, that's you big-timing them.
It's a new year, Danger.
Somebody's
I'm not
going
big-timing anybody.
Somebody is going to claim that you big-timed them, even if it was unintentional. I'll predict that right now. Even if big-timer Brian, the original big-timer,
who came out, actually. Yeah.
And you big-timed him again. You were supposed to buy him a beer, and you didn't buy him a beer. Did you buy him a beer?
Well, I mean, it was one of those he already bought a beer, so, it's...
Big-timer Brian felt big-timed when he came to the last Friday Football Talk Live. And it was unintentional. You didn't intend to big-time. You big-timed him a little bit. All right, so Gino's not going to big-time you. It's a new year. He's turned over a new leaf. We invite you to come out and hang out with us. And Gino mentioned it earlier.
I take more abuse on this show.
I don't think either of us have anything going on Friday night. So,
no.
we can hang out and chop it up a little bit afterwards as well when we get off the air at 6. We look forward to seeing you. And we'll kick off your divisional round weekend at Three Heads on Atlantic Avenue. All right, where else do we want to go today, Gino? We've got a lot of. I thought this was interesting with the Bills, and McDermott touched on it a little bit. There was a signing to the practice squad today by the Buffalo Bills. They brought in the former Ravens quarterback, Anthony Brown.
I vaguely remember this was the year that went completely sideways for Baltimore, right? He was out there at the end, I want to say.
Yeah. And you would imagine that he's the guy that's going to act as Lamar in practice this week for the Buffalo Bills. This is Sean McDermott earlier being asked about simulating Lamar in practice.
There's only one Lamar Jackson at the end of the day. So you do the best you can to try and simulate it. Good luck.
So Anthony Brown. Is that
Anthony Brown. Yeah, Anthony Brown helps with that. Yeah.
So that explains that movie.
It's probably bigger than that, but that's certainly helps. I mean, the full answer is if you just put a mobile person back there when you're planning on working on the scrambles or the quarterback run game, the defensive players know, this is one of those plays, right? If you just have to sub out one of our normal quarterbacks for a mobile player like that. And so in order to hide that, what Anthony brings to the table is both. He can throw it, he can run it, and so there's a little bit more of a true honest look down in and down out, whether he's handing it off, dropping back, or doing some of the things conceptually, at least, that Lamar does.
What do you mean? You mean Mitch Trubisky isn't a suitable simulation for Lamar Jackson?
There's a bigger picture. Really?
Yeah.
What is the bigger picture? Oh, I didn't think you would. They just don't want to say, come Monday, Anthony, great job. Appreciate it. And
bye.
We need you again. Yeah, we welcome back. Eli Anko released from the practice squad. Eli Anko's got to be like, what the heck?
Yeah.
What's going on here? How do I get on the field?
Yeah, you keep me on speed dial. I know I'll be getting a phone call from you again soon. Don't worry. By the way, the Eagles picked up a linebacker today, former Buffalo Bill, former Philadelphia Eagle. Nick Morrow is now with the Eagles practice squad. They may actually need to use him. He started 12 games for them last year, and with Nakobe Dean out for the rest of the postseason, he could be somebody that maybe gets on the field for the Eagles here in the postseason. He signed this offseason with the Bills, did not play much, and he was eventually released.
Yeah, talking with PJ Glasser about that Rams-Eagles matchup. Wait a second, the Rams are getting 6 points? Oh, I'm jumping in. PJ's like, whoa, hold up. Like, the Rams outside are a much different team. Remember the rainy night. It's a Thursday night. It's against the 49ers, and Cooper Kupp doesn't get a single reception. That hurts a lot of people. And, yeah, the Rams won, but it was really ugly. I'm hoping for a really good matchup. All these games I've got really high expectations for this week.
Yeah. The Chiefs, I've yet to talk to the person that gives Houston any sort of a chance against the Chiefs. A coworker of mine, Moose, came over to me and said, "Yeah, I think the Texans are going to beat the Chiefs." I'm like, "You're just saying that because your brother's a Chiefs fan and you want to get under his skin." No. I'm like, okay, fine.
Well, give me the reasons. So my old man is of that camp. Houston's going to win. I'm like, really? Okay, just why? Oh, the Chiefs, they've been living lucky. I'm like, no, but that doesn't. The universe doesn't work in that way. I know we like to think that things balance out. I'm just looking at this specific matchup. It's not like these NFL gods are going to say, Kansas City, you were lucky against Denver and Baltimore and all these games.
Here's what I'll say about Houston. And the positive I'll give Houston going into this game against Kansas is their defense is nasty. That's a nasty, nasty Texans defense. That is going up against an offensive line that has been suspect for much of this year. They might be able to affect Mahomes. That defense might be able to affect Mahomes.
I'm a big believer in that rest helps, but this is too much rest. That's why I was surprised. Okay, Kansas City is just resting everybody against Denver. Christmas Day was the last time they played a meaningful game. Christmas Day.
Yeah. And much like there aren't a lot of people willing to raise their hand and say the Texans could beat the Chiefs, I'm hearing the same from a lot of people about the Commanders and the Lions, and that Jaden Daniels' magical run of this season, his rookie season, could come to an end in Detroit. But again, I think if there's something that I could point to with the Commanders is that Daniels against that Lions defense might be able to hang. He's pretty remarkable what he's been able to do with very little around him in terms of the run game, with a beat-up Lions secondary and a beat-up Lions defense. Maybe it's close. Maybe it's close. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, the Lions probably win that game at home. But that stat about losing quarterbacks, the quarterbacks that lose their first time in the Super Bowl, really going to be put to the test here this weekend. because in the NFC, you have the stat is that since the early 90s, since the Four Falls of Buffalo, there hasn't been a single quarterback in the NFL who has made his debut start in a Super Bowl and lost ever to return back to the Super Bowl, which you would flag Jared Goff and you would flag Jalen Hurts in that scenario. So if that stat holds, Goff and Hurts never get back to the Super Bowl for the rest of their career. Hard to believe, but that's what the history of the NFL has shown us since the Kelly era Buffalo Bills. So I think that's going to get put to the test here big time. It would really only mean that Stafford is the only quarterback that realistically has a shot at making it to the Super Bowl. And if Stafford is back in the Super Bowl again, that stat, once again, I'm going to be like, unbelievable, the NFL.
Well, also, how many rookie quarterbacks have started in the Super Bowl? I know. 0.
Marino wasn't a rookie, was he?
No, second year.
That was the second year against the Niners?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's a tough putt. You've had Flacco. You've had some others.
Roethlisberger.
Get
Russell.
to the championship game. But Russell Wilson, did they? Was that a wild card? I'd have to look that up. The following year, they get to the Super Bowl. But it's a stat that I'm sure you'll bring up again. And when we get to the Super Bowl, boy, if it ends up being the Bills against the Lions or Bills against the Eagles, I don't want that trend to end, right?
No. And I think when the playoffs started, you looked at who was left and what the road would look like for the Bills. None of it's going to be easy.
Well,
none of it's going to be easy.
Dude, here's my take.
Let me hear it.
Of all the teams left here, and you're getting the toughest matchup far and away. Kansas City, I understand, 2-time defending. Bills match up better against Kansas City. They match up better than against any team in the NFC. If the Bills are able to get by this team, the expectation is we're winning the whole thing.
Yes. And what I like what feels different about this team is there is really, and I think this starts with Joe Brady with his whole 1-0. Like, we're 1-0. You get a win, you're 1-0. You don't worry about the past. You're not worried about the future. You are present, and you are 1-0 if you win that game. And then you look at the next game, and you say, all right, let's go 1-0. I feel like there's a bigger belief in that now. There's less external kind of distraction and noise. When Allen and the team talks about that, it feels more genuine this year to me. Anyways, tomorrow on the show is going to be fun. We're going to get back to talking Go Heavy Bills and talk with Dan Fates as we do every Thursday afternoon at 3:25. And is this true? We're going to have Matt Milano on with us tomorrow?
No, I wrote that as a joke.
No, Matt Milano.
Well, if we have
he doesn't
Matt
talk
Milano,
to the media.
Okay, let's role play. You be Matt Milano, and I'm going to be myself. So joining us here on the show is Bills linebacker Matt Milano. Matt, big week. What do you think about this matchup against the Ravens?
Could be tough.
See, that's not a good impression. Just doesn't say anything.
Oh, right. Just go ahead and ask him a question, and then what you end up getting is crickets.
That's about it. No, it's actually going to be Jeremy White, WGR, joining us, which love catching up with Jeremy, especially around this time of year.
Yeah, it'll be fun. And I'm going to maintain, Gino, that the pressure in this game is more on the Bills than it is on the Ravens. And I think because of McDermott's inability to get to the Super Bowl, if it doesn't go the Bills' way on Monday, I'm already thinking, what does the world look like? I'd love to think about what it looks like if they win, because we're going to be squarely focused on the Chiefs and the AFC Championship game. But if they lose, we're wasting Josh Allen's prime. This coach can't get it done.
It's no different in Baltimore. In fact, I think it's worse. You're going to have a 3-time MVP make just a one AFC Championship game. That's falling short of expectation. So it's going to be really bad. Stating the obvious for whatever fan base, but I love this idea, Danger, that just the chip on the shoulder, everything else. You're bringing up Jordan Phillips earlier about size. Can I bring up somebody that we've had on this show multiple times during training camp that's had kind of a down year?
Daquan Jones.
Yeah, Daquan Jones talking today
Good.
about the Buffalo defense. No one making Pro Bowls. Josh not making All-Pro. Our goal is to win a ring. People saying, I don't got the stats, Ed Oliver don't got the stats, we're chasing something better. These guys hear it.
Yeah, they're listening. They're feeling themselves. They're hearing the chatter, and hopefully they're using it as motivation, as a chip. And maybe that's I like to believe that plays a role and it will be a factor, but I also believe that if you're large, a large human being, that might be a factor as well. Like your actual physicality is a factor as well. Jones needs to have the best game of the season. Ed Oliver needs a repeat of what we saw from him in Detroit when he was a factor. And he basically eliminated Detroit's run game by just being so fast and penetrating against a really, really good offensive line in Detroit. Best game of the season. And then if you do go with some size up front and as part of your rotation, yeah, I want to see Jordan Phillips. You know, you're here. You've been back and forth and contribute. And I think Phillips is the one I'm actually the least worried about. Like, I think when Phillips' name gets called, he'll make the plays he needs to make. It's Oliver and it's Daquan Jones. It's those two guys that really, I think, need to step it up, because we saw when they lost to Cincinnati 2 years ago, neither of them were a factor. They were on skis. And the pass rush just couldn't get to Mahomes last year in the divisional round. So that's no easy feat trying to corral Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. But those two in the middle really, really need to have. And I'm glad they're hearing the noise. That's good. Play with a chip. Play with a chip. Let's get to a round of shots.
Yeah, shots in the sports bar coming up as we will talk about, we got hockey tonight.
Oh.
The team that plays basketball down the road, they're not very good this season.
Oh.
I'm talking about Syracuse.
Okay.
I
thought you were going to talk about the Rochester Royals right down the road.
I feel bad because the gentleman who actually saw Rochester Royals game, I asked him to call back, and he didn't call back. So
I hope he's feeling okay.
Yeah.
At halftime, we're doing a Charleston competition. Hey-ya, hey-ya, hey-ya. We'll give away a certified loving cup.
We'll give you a little baseball nugget here, and then, boy, one of our all-time favorites in the sports bar is making a comeback.
Okay, we have time for your calls as well. A round of shots next. 866-4FAN, 585-866-4326.
You're listening to the
Back at practice today, Alec Anderson and Ray Davis were limited. Everyone else practicing fully, including kick returner Braden Codrington. Didn't go so well for the Bills against the Ravens in Week 4. Head coach Sean McDermott on what he took out of that game.
I mean, I think you always try and learn from the past the best you can, and there's a lot of lessons that we were taught in that game. So we got to make sure that we have a good week of practice, prepare like we need to prepare.
So the Ravens have put in a claim for wide receiver Deontay Johnson, who they waived earlier in December. The Texans were waiving him on Monday. According to ESPN's Adam Schefter, the move only procedural. It's to gain an extra comp pick. Buffalo Sabres are home tonight, taking on Carolina. Coverage begins right at 6 o'clock here on The Fan. Gene Battaglin, the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
The sports leader, 95.7 FM, and streaming online at thefanrochester.com and the Odyssey app. This is The Fan, Rochester.
Yeah, I want to thank John for sending me a text on the secret textoso line to clear that up there for the Ravens.
Yeah.
It's a procedural move, Schefter pointing out. He doesn't have the ability, Johnson doesn't have the ability to play this postseason and probably won't even step foot back in the Ravens facility, but he can help the Ravens in the offseason by being on the roster in order for them to obtain an additional comp pick potentially in 2026. So this is just about working the comp formula and free agents in, free agents out. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, John. Let's get to a round of shots in the sports bar.
Louisville basketball was really bad last year. They went 8-24, just 3-17 in the ACC. But you know what? In this day and age, you can really turn things around quickly in that sport. This season, the Cardinals 13-5. They beat up Syracuse last night, 85-61. The Orange falling to below 500, 8-9. This game was over early. The closest the Orange were in the second half, down by 14. SU back home Saturday afternoon, 4 o'clock against Notre Dame.
You know, it's funny. Normally, in the world we grew up in, we would be looking at a loss like this and asking a lot of questions and wondering, you know, what does a coach need to do and what about the town? Now it's like, I really don't know how critical you can be of anybody in college athletics, because what it comes down to more than anything is you have the money to buy the talent or you don't have the money to buy the talent. Your collective is paying for the best athletes to come to your school, or they're not. And, you know, kind of sad that we were there, but at the same time, if you're a school like Louisville, you got to be like, we're not apologizing.
Yes, but, okay, let's say the Orange, they don't get the 12 wins this season. I think that's possible, okay? Like, I don't mean to offend
no question.
anybody, but we're not having a conversation about Adrian Autry. Like, the idea that anybody that follows the legend always has a tough time.
That's right. Sure
so,
Adrian Autry, Gerard Mayo just sitting down at a bar, having a couple of beers.
It's Jared Mayo.
Mr. Mayo. Mr. Mayo.
Mr. Mayo. On to the third round of the Australian Open for Jessica Pegula. The 7th-seeded Pegula will face Olga Danilovic from Serbia. Meanwhile, for the first time in 3 years, Naomi Osaka has reached the third round of a Grand Slam. Osaka with the upset, 1-6, 6-1, 6-3 over the 20th seed Karolina Muchova.
All right, I want to pretend like I care, but remind me, Osaka walked away from the game, right? Naomi Osaka was
correct.
American tennis player who walked away from the game because it was too emotionally draining or mental health?
I think it was mental health. Uh-huh. She stepped aside.
And she's back.
She's back.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I'm not rooting against
no, it's good for
Jess Pegula. I'm just saying the sport needs names, right?
She had a memorable win in the U.S. Open over Serena. So that's, one of those. I think it's very good for the sport if Naomi Osaka's doing good. And certainly we're hoping that Jessica Pegula takes down her first Grand Slam. Lions host Washington on Saturday night. Now, if you've ever wondered what OCD looks like.
Oh, I know where you're going.
Yeah, you're going to notice it with Commanders kicker Zane Gonzalez when he comes onto the field, from tapping his head to pushing back his hair. Well, he did kick the game-winning field goal against Tampa Bay, but he repeatedly took off his cleats, adjusted his socks, put his cleats back on leading up to those moments. Gonzalez, talking with reporters this week, says he's okay. It's his family that actually worries about him.
Well, yeah, because you're watching him on national TV and you're like, what's this guy's deal? You don't realize that he might actually have a mental illness. He might actually have obsessive compulsive disorder. Well, I was watching it with my kid, and she's like, "What's he doing? What's his problem?" And I'm like, "He's probably superstitious. It's a routine."
This is not. This is actually.
It's actually OCD.
It's actual. This is what it looks like, and now it's going to be something. And by the way, he's open about it. He's talking about it. But here's another thing too. You know, the last time he kicked in the league before this season, I do. I'll tell you the answer. 2021 with Carolina.
Okay.
It's a game where he's warming up against the Bills. This is with Cam Newton going 2.0 in Carolina. If you remember after the Patriots. Yeah. And so Zane Gonzalez, he pulls a muscle or something, and Carolina has to play this game without a kicker. Mm-hmm. Okay, one of those rare instances. He never got another chance until this year. So I guess 4 years later, landing with Washington. But I'm wondering if teams kind of judged him based on,
him pulling up lame.
Well, pulling up lame, but
all those years ago.
But the OCD. Hey, we want to have some kickers. We're gonna. Do you think that factors in?
Yeah, if you play that out, you think about it. Okay, here's a kicker who injures himself in the pregame, leaves a team kind of helpless without a kicker for the entirety of the game, and then gets released by that team. They're probably saying things out of school. They're probably these guys are probably talking out of school like, hey, whatever you do, that guy's a weirdo. No, don't go with that guy. Not only did he leave us hanging in that game against the Bills, he's OCD. He can't get out of his own head. He's got the yips. Whatever it is. And all of that said, like, we're having a different conversation about Zane Gonzalez if that kick is just a few inches to the right, because that was not a guarantee. That was a doink. So they're very unsettled at kicker. We're nervous about Tyler Bass. If Zane Gonzalez is your kicker, you're not sleeping.
That is the one position in sports where that would almost invite that behavior, right? I would think, because tell me things other than maybe a golf swing that are just more mental.
Yeah. To me, it's very much along the lines of golfers who have their routine, or NBA player at the free throw line who has their pre-shot routine. You keep that routine. You practice it. You study it. You know it, and you have to do it in order to perform at the level you need to perform at.
Yeah, but this isn't anything like that. If you're taking off your cleats and you're adjusting your socks and you're doing it over and over again. There was, for years here, Danger, the parking garage right across the street here. We would just kind of look out, and I always noticed this individual who would lock the car, check all four tires, unlock. Okay.
Really?
Yeah, you never saw him?
No.
Yeah,
Wow.
Scotty Karate, and be like, oh, there he is again. It's like, what do you do? You want to help, but
he does it out of. It's like the movie What About Bob, which kind of shed some humor on the condition, but it's a real life condition where people will open the door, close the door, open the door, close the door before they walk through the door, or whatever their compulsive disorder is. He's got it. So that explains, because I think a lot of people for the first time saw Zane Gonzalez like, what's this guy's deal? We were doing it. I was questioning it.
Yeah.
Now we have an answer.
Right. Sunday Night Baseball on ESPN doesn't have the cachet of Sunday Night Football, but hey, why not? It's a winter afternoon. Let's think about warmer things. Why not tell us who's going to get moved to Sunday night? The first half of the season for Sunday Night Baseball, they do this in two parts, Danger, and then they'll kind of figure out the schedule based on who's good or not. To no surprise, leading the way, the LA Dodgers. Now, teams can go on Sunday Night Baseball a total of 4 times. That's the agreement. 5 times. The Dodgers are using 4 of the 5 already in the first half against the Cubs, the Braves, the Mets, and the Yankees. The first Sunday night game will have the Braves and Padres on March 30th.
When? How many days until pitchers and catchers?
It's got to be pretty soon, because the Dodgers and Cubs open up in Tokyo for real this year.
What are they doing with Alonso? What are your guys doing? Taking a long time, isn't it?
Well, I think it's this. Who else is going to sign him? Does he want to go to the Angels? Does he want to go to... Come on, Pete. Sign where the line is dotted. Let's go. Finally, a story we all can get behind here in the sports bar after nearly a dozen years out of the spotlight. Catherine Webb says it's time for her to get back out there. Webb saying she's open to all new possibilities and opportunities in 2025, including runway modeling, a return to SI, an appearance during the upcoming Fashion Week in New York next month.
When you're a quarterback at Alabama, You see that lovely lady there? She does go to Auburn, I want to admit that. But she also, Miss Alabama, and that's A.J. McCarron's girlfriend, okay? And right there on the right is Dee Dee Bonner. That's A.J.'s mom. Wow, I'm telling you, quarterbacks, you get all the good-looking women. What a beautiful woman.
Wow, A.J.'s doing some things right down in
So if you're a youngster in Alabama, start getting the football out and throw it around the backyard with Pop.
Are we allowed to say she's beautiful? She can do whatever she wants. She can, anything she wants to do. Go do it, Catherine. She is stunning. She is absolutely stunning.
This does not make us, Piggy Danger and Piggy Battaglia for saying that she's a beautiful woman.
She can do whatever she wants, and she will be a success at it. She is stunning. She's smart. She's the package. She's the real deal. If I'm out of line for saying that she's going to be a success if she wants to get back into modeling because she's an attractive woman, I'm sorry. She is stunning.
The difference between Danger and I, one of them professionally, is I will get tongue-tied. Sometimes I lose my train of thought, all right? Never happens with Danger,
ever.
It
happens. It happens frequently.
It happened once, big time.
This is only the time you remember it happening because it was a memorable, memorable flap. But normally, it does happen. It happens every afternoon.
Because we're sitting in opposite directions at training camp, and Danger sees who's coming this way. And I'm not looking, and he completely just stops talking on the air, which, if you're hosting a radio show, is actually a bad thing. Who's coming this way? Well, that was the year A.J. McCarron was at Bill's camp at Fisher, and that was Catherine Webb at St. John Fisher University.
She was stunning. She was pregnant, and she was stunning. Stunning. Just amazingly beautiful. So she will do whatever she wants to do, she will be able to do in 2025. I'm open to all possibilities and opportunities. You can do whatever you want, Catherine. I don't think anybody's getting in your way. Go for it.
It's that quote. It's like, okay, I think there would be a line. I don't think you're going to get Catherine Webb OnlyFans or anything like that.
No. I mean, she didn't want to do that. I'm saying she can run whatever she wants to run, do whatever she wants to do. I have a hard time believing that she's going to face any sort of struggle in her endeavors. I think she's going to be fine. I'm glad that she's open to going back to work and doing what she wants to do.
It tells me AJ's career is kind of done at this point, and they've got 3 boys now.
So. His NFL career.
Yeah,
NFL
career.
Was Battlehawks, right? I think he was the quarterback for the USFL team.
Was he? I didn't
or
really pay.
UFL team,
UFL?
I should say.
Oh.
I think he was the quarterback of the St. Louis franchise. And which I guess is as close to being in the NFL without being in the NFL as you can be when you look at the UFL, because that's the only team that I think actually draws fans and has some sort of relevancy in their market. Well, good for her and good for them. 3 boys, you said?
3.
Yeah, love the story.
Honestly, if you want to really create headlines, where's the old man these days, Musburger? Like, there's got to be some sort of reunion. There's got to be some sort of podcast that will get both these on at the same time and how their lives both changed after that one cut. Because for her, and this was when really social media was just beginning, but it just exploded. She became an overnight celebrity. And for Brad, even at that day and age, he took flack for that.
Oh, he took a ton of flack for that. In fact, it was, he was at the end of his play-by-play career as that was happening, and he still, contributed to the Raiders. He wasn't on the call this year. It was his first year not on the Raiders play-by-play call. But he's kind of down there now with Gruden. And remember when Gruden got let go?
First of all, as I told Coach, whoever took you out, John, that was a paid assassin, okay?
Okay.
That was one of the best hit jobs that I've ever been around, okay? They didn't go to their media goombas. They didn't leak this to Adam Schefter or one of those guys who break stories. They first went to the Wall Street Journal. And when Gruden was still coaching after that, then they dumped the rest of it on the New York Times. That was a professional hit job. But I want to tell everybody that I'm not completely sure it was somebody in the NFL. There was a second lawsuit involved, okay, between the owner, Snyder of Washington, and a former general manager. And that means that a lot of outside people had access to those emails.
Yeah. And we learned down the road as more was being unfolded from the Washington scandal, that it was a professional hit job, and the rumor is, or the report was, that it was somebody within Jay-Z's Live Nation that had ties to the Commanders that saw that email and just said, you know what, he's dead. We're taking him out.
Yeah.
And she released it, ending Gruden's career. And I know I was very vocal about, like, I want Gruden to get another shot in the NFL. I believe all of us make mistakes, and where would any of us be without second chances? It's clear he's not getting requested for interviews. There's some sort of blackballing going on, because I think the guy could probably still coach, and he knows ball, but no team is talking to him, and he's doing his thing at Barstool, and that's probably where it will end.
And there's also a lawsuit that Gruden's having at the NFL. So before you even request, like, how do you navigate around that?
Right,
You know,
and every GM that is interviewing a potential head coach probably doesn't want to have to deal with that headache. If you're the owner of the Jets, if you're the GM of the Bears, you want to interview as many people as you can. The last thing you want to do is divert and deal with the distraction of interviewing that guy, because that would be a big story, and it hasn't happened once. We haven't seen him interview with any of the teams that he could potentially land with. Do we have time for one call? Do we have time? We're up against it. Normally we give you last call here at 866-4326. But we'll tell you that you can join us before we cut out here this afternoon. Join us Friday from 3 until 6. We'll be broadcasting live from Three Heads Brewing on Atlantic Avenue. Friday Football Talk Live, the playoff edition. And do we want to say who's stopping by?
Absolutely. So we're going to talk to on the phone Chris Trapasso, who couldn't make it in, but Chris Trapasso, who you're here on One Bills Live, and we've had this relationship, CBS Sports. He will be joining us. Coming in will be, and look, we love him. He went to Syracuse. He coaches in Section 5.
He's one of us. We call him one of us.
He was a second-round pick of the Ravens.
Yes.
Block way back in the day. Adam Terry will be coming in person.
I am so excited for that. While you're at Three Heads with us on Friday afternoon, make sure you score a 4-pack to go for game day of the limited run Leaping Hazy IPA, the playoff edition. That's available only at Three Heads. And, of course, our friends from Freddy's Woodfire Pizza will be slinging pies as well. The playoff edition of Friday Football Talk Live is this Friday, 3 to 6. We'll look for you live, Three Heads, on Atlantic Avenue with the Fan Rochester. Fun show this afternoon. Kevin Ostreicher of the Locked On Ravens podcast. PJ Glasser out of Baltimore, and the host of Send It In. If you missed either of those conversations, search the Sports Bar wherever you get your shows, your podcasts. You will find all of our work there. Sabres hockey next. But listen anyways. Talk to you tomorrow at 3 on the Fan Rochester.
You're listening to the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.